And I am calling the May 12th, 2025 Select Board meeting to order. We have a quorum. We have everybody here. Good timing.
Move to open the executive session to consider the value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. Discuss the terms of a potential memorandum of agreement between the Select Board and Deaconess Abundant Life regarding the proposed warrant article for a continuing care retirement community overlay district, and to resume open session for the Select Board at 6 p.m.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Yeah, Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Myself, I'm an aye. Mr. McKenna?
Aye.
Ms. Ravelli?
Aye.
Thank you.
Very good. Calling the May 12th, 2025 Select Board meeting to order.
Yeah, actually, back to order.
Back to order.
Back to order. Second? Is that a second?
All in favor? We're all here.
Aye.
Very good. Okay, first order of business is public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes, and it's for us to hear anything that you want to tell us about things that are in front of the Select Board.
I see Diane Proctor has her hand raised.
Diane, do you want to go? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. If there's no one there, I'm sorry not to be there. I have a meeting that abutted this directly. So I just wanted to say that we're excited that the league is having 2 more public hearings.
You froze.
From 10 to 12 in the Concord Free Public Library.
Diane,
in
back up
the-
a little bit. You froze, so back up a little bit
Oh, I
of
did?
what you were saying.
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry.
That's okay.
All right. On Wednesday, this Wednesday, we're having a warrant review. The League of Women Voters is having a warrant review in the Concord Free Public Library in the Goodwin Forum. And on that day, on Wednesday, from 10 to 12, we will be reviewing Article 8, which is the road maintenance, Article 34, which is the stormwater enterprise budget, and Article 22, the retirement budget stipends. The major parties that are supporting those and presenting those will be present. And on Friday, in a slightly different schedule, 10:30 to 12:30, we'll be reviewing the school budgets, the public schools, Concord Public Schools, the Concord Public School capital budget, the regional district budget, the amenities building, the town budget, and town capital improvements. And that's on May 16th from 10:30 to 12:30. And everyone is welcome to join. What is lovely about these is that there is ample time for presenters to discuss and talk about their proposals, and for people to ask questions and to learn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. In the room?
Don Kupka, 39 Devon Street. I wanted to say that I'm thrilled to see that there's a proposal for small cell from AT&T that'll be coming to the Select Board shortly. And that is wonderful, because that is the way that it's usually done in towns and cities and any densely populated area. Small cell is kind of analogous to a street lamp versus a 1,000,000-watt light bulb in the middle of town. So you don't often see cell towers in towns. You have small cell. My question is, would we care to approach the applicant in advance of their meeting with you to see what it would take to have more than the 2 locations they've identified? And I saw that those 2 locations were on the AT&T coverage plan that they presented when they talked about the landfill site, which is great. But of course, Verizon and others aren't covered. This is AT&T. So the question would be, maybe by talking to the applicant in advance, we could learn more about what are the obstacles to by that method, and whether or not there's a way to cover all of town with 10 or 12 small cells. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, hi, Jim Jackson, 44 Marlborough Road. I just had a question on, I know you had a meeting regarding warrant 46, the Newburyport rezoning proposal.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Should I start over?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Jim Jackson, 44 Old Marlborough Road. I know you had an earlier meeting regarding warrant Article 46, the Newburyport rezoning. Everything with that is moving so quickly. The neighbors weren't aware that this might be the only time to make a public comment, so they're coming a little bit later. And we have not seen the latest proposal. We did get documents from Newburyport today at like 3:30 in the afternoon of the changes that they are making to the proposed warrant language that we're just reading about now, and the presentation they're making this evening. So I know there's quite a few neighbors that are planning on attending the meeting, so I don't know whether there'll be any public comment time for them when they get here. That's all I'm asking.
Well, it's not a hearing. We had a hearing already. But Deaconess is coming here. We're going to be listening to them. We don't have a draft to talk to you about, and there will be limited public comment.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes.
Hi, my name is Alice Daly. I live in Wedgewood Common, Concord. And Concord has done some fine work in helping people with their homes and the high taxes. And they've also, in the last 2 years, have been paying attention to not having seniors forced out of Concord by the standard of the cost of living. And there are people who have been living here of a certain age, of a certain fixed income, who are renting. And I want to know, is there any help for the renters? Are you working on it? And also, is there somebody that could be a contact person for me?
Actually, this is really where we listen to you. Is there a contact person? I don't really have an answer for that. I think we're working on this.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear.
Actually, if you have a comment to make, this is the time to make a comment,
Well-
but it's not a time for us to interact because it's not on the agenda. And if we're gonna have a conversation about it, it needs to be on the agenda so people know that there's going to be a conversation.
So you don't want to receive information?
If you want to give us a comment, then we'll listen to your comment, but we can't have a conversation.
Oh, but wasn't that what I was doing?
I thought you were asking a question.
Oh, well then, oh, I see.
See, okay, good, yeah.
So there's no way, so where do I go to, where do I go?
Well, we have a tax fairness committee.
Yeah,
That's probably the best place for you to go. And we have a committee looking at tax fairness again. And Wendy Ravelli is the liaison,
Right.
and she might be able to tell you offline when those committees are meeting, and you could go
Oh.
there.
So that I could
Happens to
con-
be meeting this Thursday
well, I
There you
could-
go.
at 9 o'clock.
I could
Right.
come to your meeting.
Yes, you can.
And-
And it's going to be here. Yes,
At what time?
9 o'clock. Oh, actually, you know what? It's early. It's
I can't do it this
8:15.
Thursday, but I could email you.
Yes, you could
Thank you
do
very
that.
much.
Yep.
You're welcome. Any other
I was
public,
gonna say,
All right.
any other public comment?
I don't see anything online.
Great. Okay, so let's go to the consent agenda. I see that, I think some of these minutes aren't ready, so.
Yeah, the minutes are not ready. I apologize for that. I have a number of them that are still needing review, but expect that we'll cover them all by next week.
So we take off all of these?
So, yeah,
So no meeting minutes?
no meeting minutes.
Okay, okay.
And I don't believe there's any actual gift acceptances, even though there's a line item for that.
Right.
So move to approve the consent agenda, except for the meeting minutes and the lack of gifts.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Appointments? Before you do the appointments, I would just want to point out that the last one here is a nomination.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
it should have been on the consent agenda, but we don't need to vote on it, is my
Right.
point. Go ahead.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. And move to appoint Matt Johnson of 21 Winthrop Street to the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust for a term to expire May 31, 2027. Move to reappoint Michael Lawson of 1695 Lowell Road to the Economic Vitality Committee for a second term to expire May 31, 2028. And move to reappoint Allison Ailey of 47 Warner Street as a full member to the West Concord Advisory Committee for a term to expire May 31, 2028.
Second.
Any discussion? All set?
Yep.
Okay, good. Vote,
Aye.
all
Take
in
a vote.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good,
Right.
very good. Okay.
Okay.
Mark, you're next
Yeah,
discussing.
so last week, we covered and voted to approve the proclamations associated with the Concord Pride Fest and the Juneteenth celebration this year. And there was a request to clarify our approval policy. So in keeping with the policy discussion that we had, I have drafted a brief memo requesting that the select board ask the town manager to provide for the flag raisings as outlined in the memo, which is to raise the Juneteenth flag on Thursday, June 19th, and to raise the Pride flag on Saturday, June 7th, and also authorize the installation of the ceremonial flags on flagpoles to be displayed on the weekend, or surrounding that weekend, mainly going up on or about June 6th and being removed on or about June 9th. That, of course, is subject to staff availability. So today, we're just asking for approval to recommend the flag raisings to the town manager.
So the only thing I would just say, there's a logistics, and it's just, since we have a new flag, someone probably has to recheck the flag, the lanyard, so that new flag, if we're going to have the, because we have a new flag,
Right.
we've changed the lanyard. So you just need to make sure that that lower flag, if we're going to fly it, is ready to go.
Also,
Good
it's
point.
ready to go. It probably is the first time that we've flown something underneath
Right,
the new flag.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
True.
okay.
Yeah, and so I
Yeah.
think just from a technical, I'm trying to remember, Wendy, the final thing that we had written. I think with regards to like the decorative flag, it's intended to be there for the day of the celebration for Saturday. It's at the town manager's discretion as to
Right.
logistically when they put them up
Yeah.
and take them down.
Well,
Right.
Yep.
So they might do it on Friday.
They'll probably do it on Friday, yeah, so it's not overtime, right?
Take it
Yeah.
out on Monday. So,
Right.
I mean, the reality is that's probably what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I just want to, like, the intent, it was
Right.
not that, hey, we're gonna
Yeah.
display them over like 4 days. It's just, hey, we're
Yeah.
gonna display them for that Saturday. It's the town manager's
Right.
discretion
Yeah.
as to when they put them up and take them down.
yeah, and I think that that's in keeping with what was done last year, and that there are a number of organizations participating in events celebrating the Pride celebration throughout the weekend. So that was, and the applicant does understand that this is done on a best effort basis to approximately
Yeah.
cover the time period requested.
Good.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, these were very well received last year, so
Yeah.
I'd like to
yeah,
support both of them.
but this is the second time for the
Yep.
Pride Fest and the third
Yep.
time for Juneteenth. Okay,
Ready for a motion?
move to approve the flag raising request for Concord Pride Day and Juneteenth as included in the select board meeting packet.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Okay, the next item is looking at the another run at the land use working group. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to simply look at the membership. We're not here to revisit the purpose or the responsibilities that were written in the charge. I want to emphasize, last week I rattled off the names of the people that had been appointed. I want to emphasize that these people were nominated in open meeting at their respective committees. These are not people that were nominated by me. I had nothing to do with their nomination. They were nominated by their respective committees. And I was simply informing the board and the public who they had nominated. The only exception to that, of course, is the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, and since I'm a voting member, I participated in that decision. So what I've got here, what happened last week when we spoke about this, we had a really good conversation about Paul Bohm, who was appointed, or who was nominated by the 2229 Main Street Advisory Board, being on the committee, given that he will be a sitting select board member when this committee gets to work. I really think that Paul brings a great amount of expertise to this, and I would very much like to see him participate in those conversations. So I'm proposing that Paul be an ex officio member of the Land Use Working Group, which means he would participate, as anyone can participate, really, but he would not be a voting member.
So similar to the FinCom member?
Yes,
right?
similar to the FinCom member, exactly. Yep. And so what that would do is it would mean that we would have, I think, 11 people sitting at the meetings, or anybody can really show up, but 11 would be invited to each meeting, and 9 of those would be voting members. So any discussion?
Well, I appreciate it. I'm the one who spoke up, and I really had a concern with having 2 select board members sitting on the committee as voting members. So I appreciate this change, and I'm glad that Paul can still contribute in the way he does, because he's certainly going to bring a lot of expertise from that perspective.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only other possibility is he could be the select board nominee. I mean, we could consider him when we're talking about who might be the nominee if we think he's
Well,
suited.
given,
I'm not saying that, I mean,
Yeah.
so I like what you did, so I'm
Yeah.
not, I'm
Yeah,
just
okay.
saying, like, it is also an option, is to just say, hey, well,
Yeah.
we need a select board member, who's gonna be the select
well,
board?
what do other people think about that?
I think the challenge with that is that he's already been appointed by the 2229 task force to represent that.
That's true.
Yeah,
And so that, now one member is being challenged to represent sort of 2 different perspectives on it. And I think that's tricky at best. I don't know exactly how I feel
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, I
about
think
it.
anybody who were liaisons to the different
Yeah.
committees and stuff. I'm not saying, I mean, I'm just saying it's an option. So we can get into talking about the select board
Okay.
nominee.
Yeah, I think we should acknowledge that we have received a fair amount of correspondence in the last week with other suggestions
That's right.
for
I was going to do that.
I
I really was.
representatives.
Well, we
So
got
I don't know
4.
if this is the time to dive into that.
Well, I think by a lot, I mean, I think it was 3 or 4. right?
Yeah, but.
Yeah.
And so-
I mean,
and the-
I was also referring to, I guess, NRC, as well as
natural, yeah, it was natural.
Concord can.
Concord Can.
Right, and
yeah.
I'm saying we've got 3 or 4 emails.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not a large number of emails, but we did get 3 or 4. So I think it's worth talking about as far as, do we think we should expand the membership to include someone from the NRC and/or Concord can? What do people think?
So, I guess my perspective was, we're trying to keep the committee small and to be productive. I think that not minimizing the NRC concerns, but we'd have to look at any concerns about each particular property from an NRC perspective anyways, right? So I didn't feel like we needed to have someone from NRC on the committee. It's just my opinion, but just like we're not having Climate Action Committee isn't there. I mean, there's probably a lot of committees that would like to be there, and they can still come
Right.
to the meeting, right, if there's a particular
Right.
concern. But I didn't think it was necessary, but
Right, like, I think transportation is another one.
it's another one, yeah.
That's right.
So
yeah.
maybe the planning board that we added is sort of representing a little bit the NRC and the transportation, and maybe
Yeah,
not
I
really,
don't think
but.
so. Yeah. But we have staff who represent some of those
Yeah,
areas
I mean,
too,
we
so.
can't have 15 members.
Right.
I think 9 is really ideal.
Big.
It's a strain to have 11, and we sort of have 11 now, because we have 2 ex officio members.
Also, I would point out that one of the challenges of a board that's constructed in this way is that they have to find a time to meet that one of the other
Yeah.
boards is not meeting.
It's, yeah,
And that.
There's that.
That is not,
easy.
we have that problem with the Warner's Pond Task Force because it has a number of members that also represent other groups. I felt like when we put this together, we were looking at the users of property, particularly town property, and the main custodians of those parcels, and trying to get them to really put their heads together about how they might improve upon the programming of the available land. And obviously, we did take into account the MCI property and the 2229 Main Street property, because those are two of the main opportunities, which, and it didn't immediately come to mind to me that this was going after a lot of open space. In fact, I think the properties that we're talking about here are really already developed and in some use or have some former use that needs to be considered. So I'm fairly comfortable with that.
Well, the 2229 Main Street does have a big component that's never been developed, and that NRC has expressed interest in the, Paul and that committee is very aware of it. It's one of the big recommendations in their report, so it's already on the
Represented.
radar
On the table there,
screen,
yeah.
yeah.
Right.
The other thing is that Phil Griffiths from the Rec Commission has a background in open space. So
Yeah,
I
he
think when
does.
he's
Yeah.
representing the Rec Commission, it's going to be both passive and active recreation. So I think we've got a voice there. But more importantly to me, this group of people is going to be guided by Envision Concord. And Envision Concord documents a lot of these priorities for us.
Yes.
So it's not like we need somebody
Yeah.
in there to just, everyone should be thinking about
Yeah.
these things,
Yeah.
because they're linking the potential uses to what the town said they valued in the Envision Concord document. So I think we're okay.
Yeah,
What do
and
you-
when we
do you-
added the planning board, we were really trying to address the fact that some of this may require direct consideration of the zoning of it, of an existing parcel or
Right.
individual
Right.
parcel. And so having that particular expertise was an oversight, and I think that was an
Right.
appropriate add, because that will really, I think, help this group
Yeah.
Yeah,
move
yeah, that was a,
more quickly.
oops.
Yeah.
What, do you have anything to
No, I
say?
think you'd like to include everybody, but to me, I think this is a good list. Honestly, if I was if we're gonna expand it even more, I'd probably say we should look for more at-large members versus just
Yeah.
one. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, it starts to get hard because it gets to be a big group and it
Yeah.
gets a
Yeah.
little bit unwieldy to plan and discuss. So, to me,
Okay.
the 9 feels like a good number.
Great. I don't know, do we need a vote? Do we have a motion to,
I just would point out, I
Go ahead.
think on page 34,
Of-
it looks like we hadn't amended this to add.
The recreation, yeah.
right,
Right.
that's
Yeah,
why the
it's true.
matrix I sent
Yeah,
out.
yeah, so,
Yeah.
okay, no, I just wanted.
Got it, you're
yeah,
right, you're absolutely right, that's right. So,
The matrix, yeah, was very helpful.
yeah, because we had the wrong charge. Anyway, okay, so I think, let's take a vote, can we?
Yeah.
Want to make a motion that that we'll have a,
Sure. Move to approve the amended land use working group charge as discussed and included in the select board meeting packet,
With the correction that
with
the
the
rec
correction
department.
that the rec commission will be added.
Second.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Okay, just as an update, I will be bringing nominations to the Select Board next week for the school committee. Obviously, we're waiting on them. I will be bringing nominations for the at-large and the Select Board, and I'll entertain nominations from any other Select Board member as well. We will be discussing the nominations on May 19th. And I'm putting another call out to people who are interested in possibly being the at-large representative to this working group. It's not too late to apply and fill out your volunteer card.
But it's almost too late.
It's almost
It
too
is-
late.
it's-
Right, because,
Thursday is too late.
did you say you're going to be, as chair, interviewing the people?
Yeah, you can too. Anybody can interview anybody if you've got the time. We all got the cards, right?
Yep.
So if anyone's interested, please contact them directly, and then you'll bring that information in when we discuss them next week.
Okay, and so then, and next week we'll talk about select board nominee as well?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
I think,
We might have been doing this tonight.
no, I'm going to wait until next week.
Okay.
Okay, what's the next, I don't have my agenda. I gotta find my agenda.
The town
I got
meeting
it.
time limits.
Oh, time, right. Okay. Discuss and vote on the concept of limits for deliberation at annual town meeting. Carmen, you want to talk to us about that?
Good evening, everyone. Carmen Reese, Town Moderator. You haven't seen this yet because it's almost going to be, it's almost ready for print and publication on the website, but the Town Meeting Study Committee is about to do its final report. They have a 5-page summary that will, that's been included in the town meeting briefing book, which, by the way, Shannon did Herculean and heroic efforts to get that thing to the printer during her sister's wedding. So
Oh, gosh.
she just, so anyway, she gets a gold star. So it's 130 pages long, and it is going to be a thorough, complete, fabulous document. We'll see if it's too much.
Got to find a new name.
Right.
The
Yeah,
brief,
not
the
brief.
briefing book, the big fat briefing.
Yeah, it's not brief. Yeah, big fat, maybe that's what we're going to call it, the big fat briefing book. How about that? So there's a 5-page summary from the Town Meeting Study Committee that's in that book, and it includes kind of a summary of their recommendations. And then there's another drop-down layer of their recommendations, which includes some more specifics about how to achieve some of those recommendations. So one of them, on improving meeting efficiency, has a kind of series of drop-down things, and I brought that with me. And item 2 on that list is, and these are directions or suggestions, I should say, to the moderator. Consult with the select board regarding a possible rule of the meeting that would set time limits for initial discussion of each article. And they've said perhaps with a 15-minute default. So there are towns that have a bylaw that has an absolute limit on how long there will be deliberation under any particular article. Towns' meetings can also do it by adopting a rule of the meeting. And the meeting can always do it itself when someone comes to the microphone and moves to call the question. And in general, that's a non-debatable motion that goes straight to a vote and requires a 2/3 vote, so you always know there's a supermajority of people who are done talking and ready to vote. There are times when the moderator, and not just me, but our past moderators have said, okay, we've been talking for 5 minutes, why don't you come back in a little while with that motion? We still got a lot of people. But in general, my practice has been, you know, if we've been at it for 20 or 30 minutes and someone calls the question, you know, I can't say that that's out of line, even though there may still be people who are at a microphone and wish to talk. It may be that 2/3 of the people in the meeting are ready to vote. So, and that's why we require a supermajority there on that kind of a motion. But it is certainly a sinkhole of time for us when, you know, how many town meetings have we all been to where we approve $135 million in spending without a question on unanimous votes, but then we get to the citizen petitions or other things and we spend an hour and a half on them because that's what the community wants to talk about. If that's why our meeting takes so long, and it is kind of the chief complaint that the Town Meeting Study Committee heard from voters through the survey was that it takes too long. I wish it, you know, it's hard to sit there all that time, it's hard to be there for 3 nights. We would like it to be more efficient. there's a balance to be struck between allowing people their fair say and allowing the community to have the dialogue that it feels it needs, and also using people's time fairly and efficiently. So I am bringing this to you for you to think about and consider whether you would want to make a motion like this at town meeting. It would be like a motion that is to take up no new business after a particular time. It would be to not continue deliberation on any main motion under an article for more than X number of minutes. That's basically what the motion would be.
You got a question?
I would just like to add one more comment, which is, I can remember numerous times when many of us are sitting there looking at the long lines of people at the microphone and thinking, which of these people is going to ask to call the question? Because we're all ready, so many of us are ready, and we're hoping that someone's going to call the question. So somebody gets to the end of that line, and we have to wait for all that other comment before they can call the question. So I'm just wondering what to do about that, whether we should have this suggestion, or even maybe a separate microphone that's only for calling the question, or some way that we don't have to wait another half hour for that person to get to the microphone.
Yeah, I don't know about the separate microphone, but I can see upsides and downsides.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to it.
As an approach. But, you know, I think when you see long lines at the microphones, it's because people care about an issue, and I see so many people who've come with their note card and they've timed what they're going to say because they know they only have 2 minutes, and they've rehearsed their note card, and they're going to, you know, and so they got in line, they prepared, they got in line, and they want to share their thoughts.
Yeah.
So
You
I
also
have a
have people
question. I
saying
have
the
a-
same thing over and over
You
again,
do,
too. So
and- but you manage that pretty
yeah, I
well.
think you meant,
Carmen, I got a
Well-
question. When you say the 15 minutes, for example, for deliberation, that doesn't include the presentations. That just
It would
includes.
not.
So it's just the comments from the floor.
Right.
Okay.
And as an administrative matter, I would think that it couldn't include motions to amend and a subsidiary.
Okay.
You know, that you'd start the clock again.
Okay.
For a motion to amend, and then you'd go back to where you left. So it's a little bit,
Okay.
the town clerk will help me, but,
Got one more question. So this applies to all articles. There could be exceptions if you had a very high-interest article. This is just all,
well, you could propose it that way, or it could be, there's a lot of ways to approach this. You could establish it as kind of a general rule of the meeting, unless someone makes a motion to, you know, you could establish it as a presumption that, you know, we're,
that you would manage.
right, and I suppose it could be almost, I'm thinking out loud about this because this is new territory, but it could be, for example, if you picked a number, whatever the number is, when we get there, we would just take a vote on whether
About
people
whether to
wanted
continue.
to keep talking or whether they wanted to go with the vote.
That's
And
a
it
good
An
idea.
automatic trigger of.
a kind of an
calling the
automatic
question.
calling the question,
That's
yes.
That's really,
That's-
I like
that's
that.
really
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, is that, so,
Yeah, that's what I was, yeah,
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 that's
exactly.
great.
It's just so, you know, just 2 minutes for people to give
Right.
a speech. We talked about it in the town meeting study committee. Do we want to
Yeah.
limit that and actually reduce it, right? Is there something that would say, hey, could we reduce it?
There is some suggestion to bring it back to 1 minute.
That's
I got to
tough.
tell you, I have a hard
Tough.
time with it.
Yep. So we didn't get
Go
there.
ahead.
We didn't quite get there. So if you had 2 minutes, I mean, if you said after, pick a number, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, it's just
Yep.
an automatic call of the question, right? And if
that
people
has to
vote it
pass.
through,
That has to pass.
they vote it through. If people say, oh,
Yep.
whoa, nobody's done, you know, we're not going
Yeah.
to do that, then, okay, the town has spoken and we continue on. I like that concept.
I like that.
well,
That
and if you
seems to
think
make
about
sense,
2
yeah.
minutes, right? 2 minutes, and then there's usually someone's asking a question, and then someone has to answer the question. So 2 minutes, like if you did 30 minutes, max, that's 15 people. asking a question. Doesn't feel good enough, or enough deliberation. So I think of like,
15 is a lot of speeches on the subject.
well, not for these big, high-interest ones, I don't think.
Did the town meeting study committee also consider the use of the pro and con mics?
Yes, they would like us to continue with pro and con mics, and the suggestion is that we call them yes or no, because that might be a
Yeah.
little clearer.
Yeah.
I've seen a number of people get in line at a microphone confused about whether they were
Right.
the correct one.
Yeah,
Any-
because, well, my thinking is that I think that the meeting is often influenced if there's a whole long line at one of those and nobody's standing at the other, that
Yes.
that maybe they're, you know, waxing poetic about something that everybody already agrees with one way or the other. And so I think it's a useful indicator as opposed to when you just see lines of people at microphones and you don't know whether the next comment is going to be for or against, and then it's a little bit harder to gauge whether the meeting's already made up its mind. So I think that the two things are related to each other, and I do like the idea of sort of an automatic with the option for the meeting to decide that it needs to hear more. Some articles, I won't name any, but some of them do seem to engender a lot of questions. People are trying to understand the content, and I've seen that process take a significant amount, of time to just get to where everybody seems to be understanding exactly what it is they're voting on.
Right.
And so I'd hate to think of that as being a substitute for, at some point we can assume that everybody kind of gets what the question actually is, and then they're beginning to determine whether or not they're for or against it.
And, another approach is for you to watch town meeting very closely this year and think about what would have happened if you had made this kind of a motion this year, and hold it in abeyance until next year, and allow the moderator to continue pointing out things like the observation that you just made, Mark, about there being a lot of people at one microphone. Now, I will say that last year we did have one amendment to an article, and it was very late, I think on the third night, and a whole bunch of people got in line at the no microphone. And I was able to point out to them that no one was at the microphone to speak in favor of this amendment, and that it was, whatever time it was,
So-
and they all sat down, and we had a vote. So, now it doesn't always happen, but,
I want to make a comment earlier when you said changing from pro to con to yes to no. I think it might even go further to say affirmative action and no action, because I know some people are confused about what does affirmative action mean and what does no action mean.
That's a lot to put on the sign on a
It is,
microphone.
but maybe you could say that, because it's a thought.
certainly
It's a
could, or we
thought.
could put that in parentheses under yes. Yes.
Nobody's gonna-
Affirmative action.
I think
No.
Mark's right. I think Mark's right. Nobody's going to read that.
Yeah.
But if you could explain that, I think that
Sure
would be
could.
helpful, because I do know people are confused.
could.
What does no action mean? What does affirmative action mean? I mean, it sounds good, but
So I'm wondering, it seems like it would be very useful for a lot of the articles to have this check after 30 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever. And then if town meeting isn't ready, they'll vote
exactly.
at town.
Pretty low-risk option.
Yeah,
It's a good idea.
there are some high-interest articles that have a lot of detail maybe to them, that it might take a long time to figure out the content.
Yep.
There's one in particular I happen to be thinking about right now, but I'm sure there's more than one. And I'm just wondering if we could have a general rule of the meeting, except for Article X, Y, and Z, or something like that. Can you do that motion?
Well,
We could, but I just think if people at the end of, let's say, 30 minutes are like, we're not done. When you say, okay, there's an
Show of
auto call
hands.
of the question, people just say, no, actually, we want to
Right.
want to continue, which is no different than anybody.
Right, because there's a few of them that are pretty involved, and you can tell they're going to take more than 30 minutes. But most of them should be done by 30 minutes. So that's sort of the trade-off.
I think that this proposal, I think Cameron, it was your proposal, is pretty simple.
Yeah.
And people will understand it.
Okay, let's
And if we
do it.
start making a lot of assumptions, it
Okay,
kind of-
let's do it.
But, so the ask is, are we ready? Right? It's not calling the question necessarily, because people call the question, it's like, oh, good, then we're done. But it's just asking.
Well,
No,
no, I think
Or
it's.
are you calling the
You
question?
have to say, we're voting. I mean, to say, are we ready means we're sort of,
Right, so
No, Carmen would ask the town meeting,
are we ready to?
are we
Call the
ready to
question.
vote? And people would vote, yes, we're ready to vote, or no, we're not, right?
Right, although, technically, we should have a motion in front of the meeting for
Right.
me to do that. Sometimes I ask for a sense of the meeting.
That's
How
what I
many
was
of you have made up your mind?
Yes, yes.
How you're going to vote, not what the vote is, but just how many of you know what you're
That's-
going to do
yeah.
now. And that's information for those who are still at
Right.
the...
Yes.
help us. If you get to the end of 30 minutes, you're like, okay, we're talking about this for 30 minutes.
Yep.
We've said we're going to do this. What would you just say, hey, time, it's 30 minutes? Does somebody have to make a motion, or can you just say now it's the 30-minute auto call that we voted?
Well, it would depend on what your rule of the meeting motion had been.
Yes.
One possibility is something fairly informal, in which I watch the clock, and at 30 minutes on every article, I will just ask for a sense of the meeting, of how many people have made up their minds and how many people have not. And if it's pretty clear that mostly everyone has made up their minds, then it seems like we're at the point of diminishing returns. And how about all of you people at the microphones sit down now and we'll take a vote? And then we don't have to vote on it.
Or we
Or
could
it could be
make
an
it
actual
more
formal
legitimate,
vote.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the informal one, do people hold up their cards? When? Okay, you just don't count it, but you just look at the room
Right.
and, okay.
Right, and it's not, yeah, and everyone can look at it.
Yeah, yeah,
Right,
yeah.
everyone in
Yeah.
the room can
Right.
see.
Right, okay.
Do you want to try that this year?
Yeah.
I like the
I
informal.
like that
Yeah.
idea. The other concern that I have is that if we make a motion about this, then presumably that motion is debatable, and I could see town meeting debating this for more than
Right.
half an hour, which,
Which could happen.
is,
This is true.
Do we have to do something formally for you to do that at 30
No.
minutes, or
No,
No.
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 That's
Yeah,
the-
if I have your consensus that
Yes.
you think
Yes.
that's a good idea,
I think that is
and I
a good
will do
idea.
that.
Great.
And I
Great
think
idea.
that brings us in the direction of understanding whether the meeting generally agrees with ending at that time and would
Yeah.
make a rule of the meeting motion a lot
Yes.
smoother process.
Right,
Once we've had some experience with it.
right, and then,
30 minutes?
after,
yeah, 30
after
minutes.
that 30 minutes, if the meeting isn't ready, then we would go another 30 minutes, I guess? Or like,
Or even another 15,
well,
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I would
You-
say keep it diminishing.
The
30,
rule-
15 feet.
Rule of
Okay,
half.
15, fine, that's
Oh, I don't
fine.
know, you never meet the end.
I know.
You never get there.
Somebody could go like that.
Someone will call the question.
5 seconds, right.
All right, well,
Good.
Okay.
Thank you all for
Great.
this
Okay.
conversation
Great, thank you.
and
Can you
for
s-
your guidance.
Can you stay for the next agenda item
Sure
and just
can.
listen or be here with us?
Yes.
The next agenda item is you are having a
Is there
quick,
room for public comment on this discussion you just had?
quickly, Diane.
Yes, I'll be very quick. Diane Proctor, 57 Sudbury Road. I just want to say that I find it discouraging that we're worried about efficiency in discussion rather than quality of discussion. And I think the emphasis on let's get out of there as quickly as we can and let's get this over. These are only 3 nights in a whole year in which very important decisions are made. And I think giving people time for that deliberation, giving people a sense that they're part of the town, and honoring that and embracing that, I think is actually a valuable process. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, I'm moving on to the next agenda item, which is to assign presenters to specific articles, presenters from the Select Board. You're having a coordination meeting this Friday, is that
Friday.
correct? And Mark, you're going to
Yeah, and
attend
I've
that?
agreed to attend that.
Okay, so what, I want to have a discussion with us to find out which articles do we think we would like to speak from the podium and assign people, okay?
Yep.
And Shannon, I think, did the favor of actually color coding for us things that she thinks that we would like to speak from the podium. We'll look at that, and then if you've got additions, obviously, we'll put those on later. But for now, the first would be the debt exclusion for the road maintenance. Do we think that this is something we
Yes.
should speak to?
Yes.
Okay, who's the person?
I mean, I can do that, if you want. Public Works.
We voted affirmative action, so you'll present that position. Great.
Do we want to put a time request on that now, or, so I can collect and report this to the moderator at the meeting and then tell you what the time allotment actually ends up being. Normally, I think most of our statements are two,
Oh, I was going to
Yeah.
say, I'm
Minutes.
assuming it's
Brief.
not
Yeah.
a long
Really.
presentation.
right. Okay, if it,
Shorter, better.
Yeah. I'm
yeah,
preparing sort of a.
I think the
couple
max will be 2 minutes.
Yeah.
2 minutes, yeah, so I'll assume 2 unless somebody asks for more.
Okay, the next one is the amenities building. This is a little bit difficult because we haven't taken a vote,
Right.
right? So I'm wondering, I'm proposing that we ask for time at the podium and then determine who that person will be after we vote.
Yeah,
Sure.
Okay.
And, this is probably one that's going to be very late, too, in that evening. This is, so we might
On
want
Monday,
to just
on
avoid
Monday
it
night.
and just, yeah.
Might, say that again?
I'm saying, it could be very late in the evening.
Yep.
People might want to move that meeting along.
Right.
And if our position can just be stated and support moving the meeting along,
Yeah,
that might
but
be
someone-
okay, too.
But you don't know, so someone has to be prepared with the
Oh, yeah, no,
speech.
no, absolutely with you, but I
Yeah,
think, yep. So, I mean, I'm willing to do
Likely,
this as the
right, like
liaison.
your school committee.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I'll do it as the liaison.
Well, you can, but let's assume you vote differently than the
Yeah,
rest of the
let's see.
board. That's going to be,
Okay.
so,
All right, well, that's interesting, okay.
well, it could happen. We don't know. We
Yeah, yeah,
haven't,
no, that's
we
true.
haven't
Yeah,
deliberated.
that's true, yeah, that's true, yeah.
We don't know.
since we don't know.
We
what
really
our
don't know.
position is.
So,
Possible.
So, okay, well, I've got you penciled in here 2 minutes,
Right.
and we might not even have to do that
Yeah,
at all.
okay.
Okay, good. The next one I think we have color-coded pink is
Remote.
the Stormwater Enterprise Fund. Do you think we need, what?
Mary Cameron had said
Well-
no
Yeah.
thinking about remote participation.
Yeah.
It was just I'm
Oh.
kind of happy
Yeah.
either way on this one if we think, again, it was just, I think Eric Moore's going to speak to the article, but just if there was an introduction in support of the remote participation, but also partly to just kind of say, hey, thank you to the town meeting study committee. So it's not a,
Yeah,
like, sort of must-do, but it was just,
well, the moderator can make that kind of a statement for us.
Okay.
Right.
You know, and
So, Mary, if I might, there's a distinction between coming to the podium after a presentation to speak to the select board's recommendation on a vote for the article versus being part of the presentation. And so on the remote participation article, I could see that going either way, where
Yeah.
Cameron, as an ex officio member of the town meeting study committee, may want to participate in the presentation, in which case he would just share some of the time with Eric Moore, and I'd set that time accordingly. Or Cameron could speak just to the select board's recommendation on the article.
Right.
And have his own 2-minute piece after the presentation.
right. What are other people thinking? I think that the town meeting study committee really has taken a really strong lead here.
Yep.
And we voted affirmative action unanimously, and I think that's all the support they need from us. Or I think that would be enough, but that's just my idea. Do other people think we should take 2
Yeah,
minutes?
I didn't think this was an article that we had to speak to necessarily.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
That's
Great.
okay. Well,
Okay.
I mean, I've been in connection with them on the presentation, and we'll just
Yeah.
work through
Great,
that.
good, good.
I think, though, going back on that page, on Article 25, Peabody School, I think the town meeting might want to hear from us. And I'm saying that because I watched the FinCom meeting, and there was a lot of questions and doubts and I think even like 1 minute. I think we need to say, yes, if we're going to transfer it and be responsible, you know,
It's the funds, I think.
we
that's
need the
kind-
funds if you're going to transfer it. So, yeah, I think we need to explain our position and.
Probably
in
an
1 minute.
appropriate place to talk about the land use
It is. It is.
briefly.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it
that's me,
All right.
I
Okay.
think. Is that okay with people?
That's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so there's one. Anything else on this page that people think we need to?
Nope.
Okay, good. I'm moving over to the Stormwise Enterprise Fund. Do people think we need to speak to this?
Yes.
Good, so just for the record, though, I will be the presenter for Article 33.
That's
Yeah.
Okay.
right. That's
Yeah.
right, absolutely.
Right, so that should
So that's
be,
all right.
Now,
Yeah, Mark.
that's the
Yours.
MCI
Yeah.
planning article.
Right.
But you are going to speak to that.
Yeah, I'll speak to our recommendation when I present it.
Oh, you're the
Yeah.
presenter.
Yeah,
oh,
Well, we could do
Yeah.
both.
yeah.
You don't need to.
no.
I'm just joking.
Oh, it doesn't
So-
need to be pink, because the pink is confusing me.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
All right.
The Stormwater Enterprise Fund, I think I asked this question, I forget the answer. Do we think we need to speak from the floor, from the podium in support of this article?
Yeah,
We voted 5,
I think we do.
you do? Okay. Who should be that person? Any volunteers?
I'll do it.
Well, I was going to say, Cam, since you have,
But if someone
well,
else wants to.
if you want to do this one, I'll do the number 8, the road maintenance, because I've been really involved with the transportation side of that, but
That's fine. I mean, however you want to.
however, I don't know as much about stormwater as I do
Got
about
it.
number 8.
Great, good. So
fine.
Terry
I'll
will
do
do
34.
8, and you will do 34. Perfect. That's good. That's great. Okay, what about the commercial parking? This is strange, and the reason I asked Megan to put it is because the Economic Vitality Committee is the sponsor. We voted affirmative action when I was away. If I was here, it would have been 5-0-0, and the planning board voted unanimously against it. So I think that I'm thinking that it might be worthwhile to explain our position.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Who should do, I'm the liaison to the Economic Vitality Committee, but Wendy, you're the well,
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a couple zoning ones here, so
I'll do this one, okay?
Okay.
You want to do the PRD, the next one?
I can do that
If we
one.
think we should.
If
Do
you
you
think
think,
we need to.
do you think, okay,
Well, it
do
was affirmative
do people think
finance.
we need to speak to the PRD?
So, Mary, can I just go back?
Go ahead,
The planning board did not vote against that commercial. They're making their decision at town meeting.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood.
Yep.
Oh,
They are RTM, the commercial parking.
oh, really?
Or they haven't.
Yeah.
They didn't vote on it.
The one
mean,
that they're
what did I-
against, though, is 41. And
Right.
so I have that on the list.
Yeah, that's no action. Yep. The wireless, that's the cell, that's the cell one.
So Terry, do you think we should speak to
Well,
that?
41, what was our vote?
Affirmative.
Right, so we're different from the planning
That's
board.
right.
So, yeah, I think
Following that
somebody's going to
logic.
have to explain that.
Okay, anybody, any volunteers?
I'm happy to take.
So you're going to explain our position and?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, so Cameron, you'll do that one. Okay, I'll do 44. I'm on to 45, which is the PRD. Do you think we need to speak? That's,
That's the one with the bonus thing, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
the
this is
density
the one.
bonus,
Yeah.
right. This is,
I can speak to it if you think that we need to.
You know, I don't think we need to. I don't know.
what
You
did
have
the
to play
planning
it by
board
ear.
vote?
Affirmative. We voted 4-1. We were not unanimous.
I think by the time they get done presenting it and all the detail, and then the planning board speaks.
Okay, what do you think, Mark?
On the PRD one,
Yeah,
45.
45.
I think that one's pretty straightforward.
okay, we don't have,
You know, I suppose it's not a bad idea to be prepared
Right.
to say something,
You'd
but
have-
I mean, I could, yeah. I
mean,
mean, we don't
every-
have to, but. I
Every
could go
liaison
if we
has to
need
be prepared in case something comes up, but.
okay, so Wendy, you're prepared, but likely we won't.
Ask for 2 minutes. I mean, I could go
Yeah.
to the mic if we had to, if it got out of
Got it.
control.
yeah,
Okay.
let's do
Perfect,
that.
okay. And then New England Digness, we have to have someone lined up if we're successful
So I
putting
can do
together
this,
an MOA.
but Mary, I don't know, as chair, you might want to do it. I'll say, either way, I certainly can, because I've been involved, but
I'll do it if you help me.
sure.
So we don't know our position on that.
We don't.
We don't,
Right,
we don't,
right.
but we have to see how the MOA
Yeah.
proceeds, so I'll sign up for that.
So that'll be somebody,
Yep, 2
TBD.
minutes.
And it might need to be more than 2. I
Two-
don't know.
2
It might
minutes?
need to be more than 2 minutes. Maybe 3.
okay.
This
the,
is the,
Deaconess overlay,
Deaconess one,
the
the-
Deaconess overlay
Yep.
citizens
The one we're
petition.
about to hear about later tonight.
right,
De-
Oh, yeah, okay.
yeah,
When do we have to have the time limit to you?
Friday.
No.
Oh, I don't know.
You know, Friday morning I'll set time limits, but we can discuss adjusting them out,
Okay.
you know,
All right.
between
Yeah.
now and town
Okay.
meeting.
Okay,
At least
good.
we have a planning tool.
We'll probably ask for 3 minutes for that one.
And we might not ask for any, so we'll see. Okay. Anything else on here that you think we should be?
Nope.
Okay, so let me recap what we decided, right? Article 8, Terry, right?
Right.
Article 13, Wendy, if you're on the majority side.
Sure.
Number 25, myself. Article 34, Cameron. Article 41, Cameron. Article 44,
It was you.
me, yeah. I'm not sure I need that. If the planning board comes out with affirmative action, I'm not sure we'll need to speak. So
Okay.
we've got that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
No, until RTM, yeah.
The PRD, Wendy, you're ready, but we might
Right.
not ask for the full time. And 46, that will be me, and it will be
Right.
2 to 3 minutes. Okay? Very good.
Great.
All right.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you. That was very efficient. The next article, next, we're a little bit behind. This is a continuation of our discussion with the Finance Committee relative to free cash reserves, stabilization funds, et cetera.
Oh, the sun?
Yeah, I'm trying to scoot around this.
I know,
right
it's
now.
been moving. Yeah.
I don't know which of those ones this.
What?
So are we hearing from
Where are they?
Eric's on Zoom?
Eric was here. I saw
He was
him.
here, I saw him.
They're out there.
Eric, Don,
Is it,
See around the
Yeah.
corner?
Anthony?
We're ready for you. Time is gone.
have a seat?
Hi. Need another chair and another mic.
Well, here, Don, yeah.
Got my sunglasses.
I know.
Yeah, really?
I
That
know.
was-
The only advantage of being on this side.
Trying to close them.
I was so,
If you
well,
could jump up there and
yeah,
get
the
those-
problem was that the handle broke off of
You need
it.
one of the Boston Celtics to get that cord for you, but they're busy tonight.
I see.
Yeah. But you need to spin the louvers, and I was halfway through doing it, and it broke off. So now it's kind of in the worst possible place.
Are you sharing your own screen?
Is that okay?
Yeah.
We have some slides.
Sure you, 1 second. I'm gonna give you the PowerPoint.
Okay, we good? Hi, Eric,
Should be able to
Dawn,
share your
Lindsay.
screen now.
Hi.
Mary. Hello.
Hi. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having us.
So I think tonight what we're going to do, we talked about this earlier, we've already talked about your suggestions for reserves and stabilization funds, so we wanted to get an update based on the conversation we had before. Do you have any newer ideas about that? And we wanted to also talk about the warrant articles on the, in front of the town for a stabilization fund. So let's start with the reserve policy.
Okay, recall, just to set the stage, we joined you back on March 24th to have an initial discussion on this. You gave us an action item to put our thoughts in writing, which we did. We submitted to you a memorandum on April 7th with our recommendations.
Yep.
After going back to the full Finance Committee, as well as some draft, what we consider to be new and improved policy language on reserves. we, after chatting with you, we elected to defer deliberation and a vote on those 2 warrant articles related to stabilization funds. Because you said
Three,
you were
right?
you were discussing them tonight. No, this is the Articles 18 and 19.
But 3 different funds.
3 different funds.
right,
Got
yeah.
it, okay, go ahead.
We elected to defer deliberation and vote on those in anticipation of this meeting and having
Okay.
this follow-up discussion with you.
Okay,
So Dawn and Lindsay, the brains of the operation are here to talk through where we're at and our thinking on this.
Okay.
And Dawn in particular has done some really good research and thinking.
so Don, can you, in the interest of time, can you kind of focus on what might have changed since the last time we spoke, if anything?
Yeah, nothing really changed, Mary. I would say that the town's financial policies were written in 2017, and the state changed a lot in 2018 and 2021, and again in 2023. So there's a need, really, to refresh. But to sort of better frame why we feel we should be creating reserves, the Finance Committee's charter says that, one of our objectives is to try to make sure that the town spending doesn't grow faster than the citizens' ability to pay. And we handle that through guidelines for the spending that's subject to guidelines. We feel that creating reserves for capital projects is the way to achieve that goal for the lumpy spending of new buildings. We've went through a period of many years where excess free cash was used for various and sundry purposes, and then we needed a new school, and taxes jumped up. And had we put the excess free cash into reserves, we would have been able to have a smooth, steady increase in our tax rate. And our goal for the next 20 years is to tee up a policy that puts that in place.
Do you want to talk to us a little bit about the different reserves?
Sure.
Because that's relevant to our conversation around the warrant articles.
Lindsay or Eric, jump in at any time.
Just
but
refresh our memories.
Yeah, so free cash is basically the unspent funds that have been raised over the course of the year. And the state recommends that towns not plan on that for operating budget, the next year's operating budget, that it only be used for really 2 purposes. One is to one-time unexpected things, and the other is to fund reserves. So there are 2 kinds of reserves. There's a general reserve fund and special purpose. The general reserve fund is really the rainy day fund for emergencies. If there is a reduction in state aid or some other revenue source, you could call upon the general reserve for that. Or if there's a catastrophic loss and we need money, so we think of that as our savings account, and that should be, according to the state, somewhere between 5% and 7% of our annual budget. Special purpose, and by the way, to take money out of that requires a 2/3 vote. That's the only one that requires a 2/3 vote. The others are simple majority. The special purpose reserves really are a way of saying, you know what, we're planning to do a DPW building or a fire department, and we want to put money away toward that end. There are towns that have them for their roads program, which is wonderful, so you don't have to borrow. And the state gives a great example. They say, what if a town knew that they're going to need a $400,000 fire truck in 5 years? If you could put away the money in reserves, you'll save $150,000 in financing costs over the life. So that's kind of the objective here.
So that one's actually very specific, because what that's doing is just, your purpose is to avoid financing cost, really. So, I mean, I want to be crystal clear on the goal and the use of each one of these
Yes.
funds.
Yes.
That was one that,
Yep.
we don't, I
Good.
mean, we've sort of raised our, our tier 1, tier 2, we raised the tier 1
Yep.
limit so that we can get to that same point, but we haven't obviously gotten to that point.
Yeah, you're right. We should be crystal clear on this. And it does seem like we need a general stabilization fund and special purpose. And I think the amount we did save for the middle school, I think, was about 5 million in a
Yes.
stabilization. And that was, that's proving useful. Maybe we should have had more, but at least we did that. What I don't understand is why we need a debt stabilization fund and a capital. Why can't we have one for,
Just capital.
because capital and debt, it's pretty much almost the same thing,
Yeah.
really, when we think about it. If we're going to do roads, if we're going to do a school, if we're going to do,
Terry, that's a great question, and I guess I would say that debt has grown very quickly in this town to the point where we have 11.6% of our of the total operating budget, town and schools, is going to debt service now, which is outside of the guidelines for that. So we have really two needs. We need to save for future capital projects, but
Right.
we also need to reduce our debt load now.
But I don't see how setting money aside in an account versus actually paying off the debt.
Right.
I mean, if you have credit card debt, you don't put money in your checking account, you send it to the credit card company. That's how you reduce that.
right.
Yeah, I think, Mark, the goal is, just as you're referring to the middle school, is to shave off the peaks. So as we
Well-
look at these.
That gets into how you're financing it too,
Well,
which is another policy.
I'm not sure we've answered the question,
Yeah.
what's the difference between the capital and the debt? Was that?
Well, I think what you're saying is, the capital is for future capital.
Yes.
But the debt is to pay off because our debt load is too high now, but I do agree with Mark. I think we already kind of have a plan about the peaks, which is it's not good enough, but it's helping a little bit.
Yes.
From that stabilization fund. And I think if we save more, I mean, the peak is now. It doesn't make sense to me I don't quite get it, why you would need that debt fund.
Yeah.
Especially if you have to wait till the next year to withdraw the funds
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, and in the meantime, you've paid interest on borrowed
Yeah.
money in the first place.
Just borrow less, I mean, use, if
Yeah,
you have
well-
money, use it.
Yeah, and if there's excess, then pay down the
Yeah.
principal of the debt. However, so this is what I'm wondering about your current thinking as a finance committee. So if we were to, say, adopt the idea of having a general purpose stabilization fund, and that general purpose stabilization fund, to be clear, according to what you gave us, is essentially doubling the monies, the free cash. It's got the same target, so let's say that we want to raise that. Under, what do you envision would be the process and how would that play into the guidelines process? Would you be suggesting that we fund that just with whatever was in free, seemed to be excess free cash on the, because it seems to me that we did extremely well funding our retirement programs and funding our OPEB program by setting a target in place and essentially budgeting that and saying over time, we're going to budget to create that. But I can also see the operating entities, the schools and the town, having real problems if that somehow comes out of their next year's allocation from the guidelines. So are we talking about raising taxes in order to improve our financial stability position, or just how are you guys thinking about it? What's going to look different about the guidelines process that you're responsible for if we have a general stabilization fund created?
Nothing. No, we're not proposing that the town raise taxes to fund these, but rather dedicate free cash, excess free cash to these purposes.
So but what you're really saying then is that excess free cash, which in general has been used to reduce the next year's tax levy, would not be doing that anymore, and therefore we would be reducing the guidelines to the budgeting entities in order to accomplish this goal of having a stabilization fund.
We already don't use the.
They haven't been
We
doing
don't
that
do
We
that
didn't use
anymore.
it this year.
We don't use free
We
cash.
wouldn't be reducing
We
guidelines.
moved away from that last year.
Yeah.
We didn't do it
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah. So we've already done that.
But I think, Mark, if I could pick up on what I think
Yeah.
where you're going, and from my understanding is, in essence, if you said, look, here, we have free cash that we want, I'm just gonna take the midpoint here. we want free cash to be 6%, we want general purpose stabilization to be at 6%. Today, we're lower than that.
Yeah.
So we're going to set a target that says we're going to get to 6 and
That's right.
6 within 5 years.
Right.
And so, I'm not saying with guarantees we'll get there, but like, say, so our planning is that we want to plan
Yes.
to be able to generate that money, to move it into those funds, to get to 6% by the end of 5 years, and that's
Yes.
the goal.
Yes.
And then if we have anything more than that, we can start to create a special purpose stabilization fund once we've sort of, flushed those out and gotten those to 6%. Is it something, that line of thinking, is that what you were?
Well, it doesn't have to be that sequential. In other words, if the select board decides that we're going to, we have a goal of building a new building in 5 years, and we would like to avoid a double-digit rise in property taxes, you might decide to devote more of the excess free cash to a capital stabilization fund to get us from here to there. And that's basically, and you might say, well, we know we only have, today we have $5,000 in our general stabilization fund. It's on the books, but it's not funded. That may have to wait. It'll be your decisions.
I guess I'm asking an even broader question. If we're going to build up these funds, where does the money come from other than raising taxes? I mean, this money comes from taxes at the end of the day, right? So we have, what is our certified cash right now?
It's about 10.5 million.
10.5. So, and that's what percent of next year's operating budget? Do we know?
7.5 or so. It's about what we're the
Okay,
high end of
so
free
now we're
cash.
proposing another general stabilization fund. Where would we get the money to fund that?
Well,
Mary, this isn't something we're proposing you fund today. This is a
Yeah,
structure.
okay, but
for
going forward,
future- yeah.
how would that happen?
Well, we may find ourselves underspent on budgets in the future, or with additional local receipts revenue at the end of the year. I can tell you, as a member of the FinCom, we've had many a vote of do we think it's a good idea to use $500,000 for this purpose, or that sort of a thing.
let me ask the same question as Mary, a different way. It looks like you're proposing in Article 19 to put in $1,093,584 into general stabilization fund. Where did you get that number from?
The CFO, we're not a.
Right, but I mean, why is
Where
it
did
that
he-
number? Is
where
that
did
what's
the money
left
come
over
from?
after?
Yeah, where is it coming
It's
from?
leftover free cash.
Free cash, so when they
Right.
hit, so it's
Right.
like free cash, you hit your 6% target. Above and beyond that, you're just allocating it.
Yeah.
Well,
That-
that's my
Anthony explained
question,
that.
was 6% the target, or like, how was this all
Between
figured
5
out?
and 7% is the recommended target, so they
I
just
know,
said, let's
but-
say 6%.
I think, and the other problem I have is, given the fact that your guidelines are aggressive, not aggressive, but they're.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Free cash is going to be harder and harder to accumulate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not going to be, the budgets are tight this year, especially in the town side. We know that because we're laying off people in order to meet the guidelines. So I don't see free cash growing at the rate that it used to grow when we overestimated expenses and we underestimated revenues. We're not doing that anymore. We're being much tighter based on some of the questions that you're asking. So we're doing a better job. But what it means is, we're not going to generate a lot of free cash.
Right.
So,
And I also
So-
think that you have 5 to 7% free cash, that's great, but another 5 to 7% for stabilization.
For general stabilization.
Yeah,
right?
but I
That's for
think-
emergency purposes,
Okay,
too.
but
So
I think,
it's,
personally, I think after being on FinCom and Select Board, 10% is good, 5 and 5, whatever. But 7 and 7, that does seem aggressive to me, but that's just the way I
So-
see it.
go ahead.
These numbers, they're targets.
Right, I get that.
In recommending them,
Yep.
we're not making a judgment on how
That's right.
easy or how hard they may be to get to. They're informed by state guidance, the Department of Revenue,
Yep.
and by what we saw in looking at what some of our peer towns are doing.
Got it.
But I think that if we really buy into the concept that we need general stabilization or capital stabilization, then to me, that implies some level of prioritization towards building up to that target reserve. So we've decided it's important to have. So what I'm uncomfortable with is the idea, well, if there happens to be excess free cash, then we're going to fund it. But if there isn't, well, we'll go another year. To me, thinking about that, that starts to sound like, well, it's only a fair weather kind of approach to doing it. And I would actually be more comfortable with it if we were saying, we're going to find a way to put something towards this until we, let's say we get to 10% net or whatever, and then we slow down. Or, because that strikes me as creating a reserve for a purpose with a real goal towards getting there, especially when we're talking about emergencies and unplanned events. The capital stabilization, call it debt stabilization, whatever you want. We've done those in the past. We've done them many times. I think every elementary school building had one. I think even the high school had one.
It did.
The middle school one's a little different because what we're doing is we're buffering a block instead of shaving a peak.
Right.
So that's the way I think about it. But you take my point, that's why I would be more comfortable if the finance committee was saying, hey, we see this as an important goal to achieve, and we're willing to maybe add 0.1% to our guideline number, which is then going to be moved in towards that stabilization, because that shows me that there's a program that's trying to achieve a goal that is related to our bond rating. Otherwise,
we're not going to make policy tonight, right?
I understand.
But that's a really good point, Mark. And we're already in policy. We're already discussing policy, and this is something that I hope we make as one of our FY26 goals.
Can't help myself.
I know. Good. It was good. But I think I'm hopeful that when we do our FY26 goals, revisiting the finance policies around reserves, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. I really appreciate that. We do have these three numbers that we're asking, and my opinion, I'll express my opinion. I'm not a big fan of the general stabilization fund, because I feel that if I understood the purpose would be if state aid goes down, well, we have other mechanisms to address that, lower spending for one. And the other thing was a catastrophic loss, and I think we have insurance that would cover most of those. So I'm not a big, you'd have to convince me why we needed a 5 to 7% general stabilization fund, especially given that if we got a 5 to 7% free cash. As far as the debt stabilization fund, I'm a big proponent of that. So this year I would be, I'm speaking for myself.
Debt or capital?
Well, I only said debt, right? Because
that's why I'm asking. Right.
I'm still unclear on the difference, okay?
Right, same.
To me, if a debt stabilization fund is targeted to, you've got this big, and we know we've got these big, and we're setting money aside, then that's different than just, we want to have a little fund over here to, so I'm a little bit unclear on that. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
capital stabilization funds are typically tied to a specific project. We're going to build a school, or we're going to do the roads
Okay,
program.
go ahead.
And the funds can only be used for that program.
Okay,
Or they could be by vote, moved to a different stabilization fund. But they're special purpose. So, and the goal, like from the reading that the state says why they recommend this, is to to help the taxpayers to see that the select board hears you and they're moving toward building reserves to be able to accomplish that goal.
okay, and a debt stabilization fund is not tied to a specific project?
Correct.
It's general?
It's general.
Got it.
It's debt reduction. Yep.
So any debt,
Yes.
tier 2,
Yes.
tier 3.
Yep.
Yeah,
See,
but
I think it has to be more specific.
I think I'm back to
Like
what
to
Mark was saying. When I look at in the packet, it's recommending 500,000 to debt stabilization. Why would we do that instead of just pay an extra 500,000 off the debt?
I think it's the same thing, Terry. If there's money in that fund, then it'll be, then you can it can be allocated to reduce the
But it has to
Because
be
we haven't
appropriated.
accumulated it.
But it has to be appropriated, so now you're taking 2 town meetings. I don't know, I guess I need to check with Anthony, but
Yeah.
I think I'd rather pay it directly, pay off that bond than,
Doing things like increasing our Tier 1 limit or increasing even our Tier 2 limit, because of the way we've already agreed in our capital policy to fund those. Tier 1 is spent out of operating. It's cash, and it's basically avoiding all the finance charges because it's an immediate expense. So
Right.
if we take on
right.
bigger expenses using that mechanism, then we're avoiding debt altogether, and
I think the towns that have debt stabilization funds are typically doing both at a town meeting. They're taking $284,000 to pay off that bond and moving $500,000 more into the fund for the future, that sort of a thing, yeah.
Well, as I said before, we're not going to make policy tonight, and unfortunately, we've got, articles in front of us without a policy
Yeah.
that they align with, right? I'd kind of prefer to wait for a policy, but on the other hand, I know that it would be wise to start putting money aside now, because we know we've got big capital. So this is something I think we're going to have to wrestle with.
Yeah.
Does anybody
I mean,
have-
I share, I just want to comment, I think
ahead.
that the allocation to the general stabilization is very high.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I would much prefer it go into, I want to say capital or debt, but
Right.
I don't,
Yeah.
I don't like having 2 different stabilization funds. I'd rather have one that we know is dedicated to
Well,
tier
we've got
3.
3, actually.
Well, yeah, well, we have the middle school one, but, and the
No, I
general,
mean,
but
the articles are.
I know,
put
there's
right-
3. I
There's
would
3.
prefer
2
not
articles,
to have
3.
a debt and
Yeah.
and
I-
capital. I'd rather have capital that
I prefer
could
to
be
have
used either
one.
way.
Right, I agree.
I'd prefer to have one, but until we get a policy to see, how many, but anyway, we're not deliberating.
Right, I know, so I'm not sure.
But we have to decide
just
about
opinionating.
Article 18 and 19, and I
Not
guess,
now, not now.
right, but I'm still stuck on this number of like, why are we going to put 1,093,000, this is an exact number,
Because it was the amount that was over 6%. If you look at Anthony's presentation on this.
6% was
Started with-
decided?
It was everything above 6%, right? And that's.
But we don't have certified free cash.
we have a
So
good
it was
estimate
an
of it, though.
estimate of what we
And we
might
don't
have.
have a policy.
It's a precise number based on an estimate.
Right, and we don't have a policy that 6% is the cutoff either, so,
So,
yeah,
okay.
okay, I get it.
So I think, thank you.
From a-
I think we've got more conversation. We've got to think about a policy. I hope you come into that conversation with us next year. You see what we're struggling with.
Yeah.
And we're going to deliberate and come up with a recommendation on these articles at town meeting. Is that what?
But we
yeah.
like your general direction, I think. We know we need to save money for upcoming capital and emergencies, and thank you for trying to put this together. We
Yes,
don't want to give you a
RTM,
hard
RTM,
time.
Mary.
We,
It's RTM.
Cash, we want some form of stabilization.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
want some sort of.
Without raising taxes.
Right.
Something that puts us on a pathway to getting there,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
the particulars within those subcomponents,
Yeah.
from a
But do
policy
you-
standpoint.
And how to fund it.
And to
Yeah.
be clear, the appropriations that are
Right.
considered here are coming from free cash. So if town meeting were to not take the action to appropriate it to a stabilization fund, it would still be sitting there in free cash. It would still be counted as reserves. It's not like it's being spent.
That's right.
And it would
It's
be
just-
easier to take it out because it's a majority vote.
And we in the FinCom, we'll be setting our own goals for the next
Yeah.
fiscal year after town meeting when we reorganize.
Yep.
And we can set a complementary goal of working with you.
Very good.
Respecting that you're the chief policy-making body of the town. We
Yep.
can support you with analysis and draft language,
Great.
however we can be helpful.
Yeah,
Great.
so something that.
More complicated than we
Something that
thought.
would make sense to me is you referred to the idea of smoothing the increase in tax rate. So if we had some kind of channel within which we were trying to move, and when resources spiked above that channel, that triggered a move towards increased reserves, and when they dropped below that channel, that triggered a disbursement of some of those reserves. That kind of thinking, written out would go a long way towards getting me to be more comfortable with this direction.
Okay, I'm mindful of the time.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Okay, Anthony, We're way behind schedule. I'm sorry,
We're only 20 minutes behind, so.
we're only 20 minutes
Not
behind.
that
We're only
bad.
20 minutes behind. Anthony, let's talk about the pilot.
Sure.
We have everything in the packet, so maybe we should just, I should just open it up for questions to you,
Sure, that's
okay?
fine.
Does anybody have any questions for Anthony, comments?
Well, I guess mine, and we saw the memo before, and we saw the policy before, so that's new. So you changed the allocation of where the estimate came from, and you just reduced our income reserves, right, to offset the expectation for the pilot. Do we know, is it just Emerson? Like, do you have like the top 3 institutions that you think you might be going after around the pilot? You're starting with Emerson, but,
So Emerson was just an example.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
have
yeah, I'm
some
just- yeah,
challenges.
yeah, fair.
So, we'd look to the larger
yeah, I thought so.
landowners in
Yep.
town, Emerson being one of them, Fenn School,
Yep.
Concord Academy, and so forth. Middlesex,
Middlesex.
right. So, those are the ones, we would send this letter out to everybody.
Okay.
And work with, we're actually working with, and if I get his last name wrong, is it Rick Fries, Mary?
Yeah, Rick Fries.
Oh,
Yeah, so Rick has done a little bit of this and with Brandeis and with Waltham, City of Waltham.
Waltham?
Yeah, so,
Yep.
we're hoping to, first of all, get voluntary
Yeah.
compliance and cooperation with this, and then start reaching out to those institutions where we already have a contact. And like Kerry, for instance, has our quarterly meetings with Emerson Hospital. So we would incorporate that into one of those quarterly meetings, and say with some of the private schools too.
So when we talked about this, not last November, I thought we talked about it in February, we were going to put together sort of a timeline and milestones where we could touch base on sort of the progress on that. Have you put some thoughts to what that timeline might be over the next 6 months and a year, just?
So it's really tough. We're asking organizations that are under no obligation to do this, So it's tough to put timelines because it's a negotiation, and negotiations take some time. So, we certainly want to be aggressive and talk about the shared responsibility that we have with not only our residents and the taxpayers, but those that don't, that also benefit from the services that we provide. So, I'd like to say we'd get the whole, $1.4 million in 6 months. It's just, it's going to take some time to
Yeah.
do it, Wendy. It really
Okay.
is.
We started to talk about
Right.
Yeah.
some
Well,
of that
yeah,
before
I
from
mean,
a plan perspective.
To follow up with that, I agree that it takes time, but we have to start.
We have to
So
start.
is there a schedule to start?
If the select board is fine with this letter, then we'd be prepared to send this letter out right away, and that would go to all nonprofits.
Okay, I have 2 edits to the letter then.
Sure.
In the 3rd paragraph where it says, cost of vital services such as police, fire, public works, I'd add the library to that.
Oh, yeah, definitely for.
Right.
And then
And also, I know last time we talked about this, not for Emerson Hospital, but for the schools that are sending
Students,
students. We need to add the word schools in here. That is the biggest,
yes.
expense. Now, for Emerson Hospital, you don't need to put it in their letter. They're not, I don't think, sending students, but whoever is sending students,
All the schools, yeah, because they're going to have staff.
That's good.
right? Like Middlesex School, their staff has students in our public schools.
Right.
So, yes, we can add those library and schools, but we're looking to send one letter that would go to all the organizations,
Okay.
rather than customized to,
Well,
that's.
Yeah, but,
time
all right.
I think it's worth customizing for some of those, for the
That's,
educational
you're talking
institutions.
20-something thousand per
I
student.
think, actually, though, if I remember correctly, Anthony, when we talked with the people at the Collins Center, they recommended that we send one letter to everyone.
Right.
That way, they're feeling like they're all being treated equally from the start. if I
Okay.
remember that correctly,
Okay.
even though
Well, all right, but it does
You
say
know?
such as, so you can put library and schools.
Yeah, we
because-
could add that, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, put library and schools. And then my other suggestion on the letter is the very last paragraph, you're asking them to contact you.
Yeah, I think we
Wouldn't
talked
you,
about that.
wouldn't you say, I'm going to call you?
Yes, definitely.
I think we talked about that before.
I'm going to
last time.
call you, and I want to meet with you in person. This
I'm
isn't
looking
something that
to-
you can do by letter. This is the
Yeah, you're going
introductory
to,
letter.
I'm going to call you and we're going to set up a meeting. I mean, it
That's
has to be a little bit more assertive.
There is, I think the intention of this was to send it out and maybe hopefully get some voluntary compliance, but still, at that point, target some of the folks.
Well,
If
I
people are
think-
waiting for us and there's 150 in town, it's going to take some time where, but we can do it any way you want to do it.
I would say to be a little bit more proactive.
Yes.
And then you've got your list and start with the top people and, reach out to
Absolutely
them.
agree.
And then my other question was.
So just to make sure, something like, I will be contacting you within the next few weeks to set up a mutually convenient time, something like that. So, and then you follow up and you call them and set up a real meeting with them. Because they're not going to just send in a check. You need to go in and really meet with them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the full universe, so I don't know if it's,
We never saw it, I don't think.
no, but I'm saying like the number of people that, number of meetings.
I mean, it might make some sense. I can see how if this is a letter that's going out to everything from the largest institution to the smallest not-for-profit that we have, then the feel free to call with questions makes sense. But it seems to me that the top 5 or whatever need a very prompt follow-up that says,
Yes.
you received this,
Following up.
and I'm looking to schedule time with
before you
you.
send it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, just where we have
Sounds-
relationships. Hey, I'm
Something
going to
like
send you a
that.
letter.
Yep.
Hey, you know what? Just
Yeah.
want to give you a heads
Yep.
up, right? This is coming. You may have heard of it, maybe you haven't,
So-
but I'm
Yes.
about to send you something. Because I think segmentation, to your
Yeah.
point, Mark, is just sort of like, yes, I mean, there's going to be a big difference between the top 3 or 5
Right,
people and the last
right.
The last
smallest.
50, yeah.
And I'm also wondering if there's any kind of backup behind that $100,000 number. It seems like an arbitrary number. So for example, do we have any backup, like how would we meet that 100,000? Do we have any details, like, so for example, I think the value of Emerson is what, 60 to 70 million dollars, because I don't have a lot of confidence in that number because I don't know how many people would have to be contacted, agree, at what percent would they agree to, so it seems very, very squishy.
So based on my recollection of the presentation back in November, there's, of all the nonprofit organizations, based on our policies, a potential to receive about $1.4 million.
I remember
collectively.
that, yep.
So that's obviously a little less than 10%, but just from my experience, it's, working in Brookline, it takes some time, and even 10% is pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
Because if you remember when Steve Mary was talking about it, some of these pilots started out as a low dollar amount, and they
Yep.
extended over a number period of years. So, just an example, something could be $25,000 the first year, $30,000 the second year, and
Right,
kind of
right.
ramps up to help these organizations budget for this too. So,
Yeah, I'm the kind of person that if I really have concrete targets, I'm more likely to hit them. And like I said, the 100,000 sounds kind of squishy to me. So it might be helpful to you to put something more specific down.
Also, I do think that it may take several years to get to 100,000.
Yes.
I think expecting well, in this memo here, it's in FY '26, you're expecting to take in 100,000. I'm not really sure that's realistic. That would be fantastic if you can do it.
yeah, well, that's a goal, which we tried to use this as to set a goal and to.
I don't see that as an aggressive goal, actually. If 1.4 would be a 25%
10%
pilot,
of the target,
It's
right.
7%.
No.
One-
The
100,000.
1.4 million is if everybody agrees to a 25%
Right.
pilot.
Yeah, and
right?
100,000 of that 1.4 million is 7%.
Yes.
But,
I don't see the
but
significance
I'm
of it.
only saying it's
Just-
aggressive
It's not very
because,
aggressive,
I'm,
It's not
s-
very aggressive.
yeah.
no, it is, I'm only saying it's aggressive because we're at May 12th already. FY '26 starts in like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why
Well, we need to get serious.
this doesn't
I think we need to be
seem
ser-
serious enough that we're going to have it by then.
Action plan, right?
No,
But
The number.
correct.
won't change the action. plan.
No.
It's-
Yeah, it won't change the reach out plan.
No.
I'm not saying it isn't relevant. Thing to talk about is what are the targets and next.
Right.
I guess what I'm trying to impart is that, I'd like to really see some attention given to this. This was an FY '26 Select Board goal. It's almost,
25.
it was an FY '25, thank you. Goal, and here FY '25's come and gone, and we haven't even gotten a letter out. So I'm a little disappointed in the progress
Yeah.
that we're making.
Yeah, agree.
Anything else?
All right, but, so we've given feedback on the letter, so we're saying you're good to go?
We're good to
Yeah,
go.
we're saying,
Anything else?
we're saying send it and let's get started.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony.
Okay, what do we got next?
Now we're on to the
46.
Article 46 petition.
Great, who's here?
Thank you for your
Who's here
patience.
for Deaconess? Thank you for your patience, thank you for everybody's patience.
Thank you for having us. Right here?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Megan. Getting hot in here.
We're 25 minutes late. So gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for coming here. The presentation that you have in our packet is the presentation that we saw at the hearing, right? And in the interest of time, rather than going over that presentation, what I'd like to do is have a conversation with you about things that might have changed since then, okay? And I think I'd like to start that conversation by looking at what changes have you made to your proposal based on what you've heard from the abutters?
We're going to go ahead, take it. I'd say, first of all, thanks for having us back. We appreciate the partnership with the town, and I think we've had 3 rounds of discussions so far, thanks to the neighbors and abutters at Old Marlboro. We had a nice meeting last week, and, what we've really changed about the presentation, and Mark can give the details if I miss something, but, in addition to committing, obviously, to a ample landscape buffer, that on the 40-foot setback, we're committed to not building anything higher than 35 feet. And so to preserve the residential nature of the neighborhood, to, support the walkability and the neighborhood feel, that's certainly something that we have changed. The third thing that we've changed in our proposal is to take the main building, any main building that's conceived of, the setback in feet would have to be twice the distance as it is high. And so did I get that right, Mark?
From Old Marlboro.
From Old Marlboro Road.
Right.
And that way, it would add an additional buffer, and allow us the ability to step up a building if we needed to.
Yeah, just one more thing, if I might. Mark Bobrowski, my office is in Damon Mill. We did add a landscaping provision as well at the suggestion of Elizabeth, and Mina was nice enough to send me the site to the current bylaw. So the landscaping provision is going to say that the planning board may impose a condition requiring the installation of suitable landscaping along any property line to reduce the visual impact of the principal use upon adjacent properties by the use of trees, shrubs, walls, fences, or other landscape elements. Such landscaping shall at a minimum comply with the requirements of section 6.2.9 of the bylaw. And that was her suggestion for a standard for landscaping, and we agreed to it.
Could you put that in layman's terms for me?
I think it's not quite make it invisible, but it's pretty darn close.
Okay.
And it's what we do
the
with
best you
other-
can.
It's consistent with our other bylaw,
Okay.
other bylaws components, so I think that's a good change.
So
I
there's a 40-foot buffer from Old Marlboro for townhouse buildings, which are 35 feet, and a double the height of the building for anything with 5 or more units, which we're calling multi-unit structures. And so any building that's 50 feet, for example, would have to be 100 feet back.
For the purpose of the people in the room, and I'm sorry, I should have grounded us. As you know, we're the select board is trying to enter into a minimum of agreement with Deaconess before town meeting, and we still have many outstanding issues. So the purpose of tonight is certainly not to negotiate an MOA, but to hear more from you as far as what you've done for abutters, and we'll get to other points of the potential MOA. But, so I forgot to say that at the beginning. So anything else you've done to address the abutters' concerns that you wanted?
I have an email from your attorney with 5 items, and every one of them has been addressed in the new version of the bylaw.
Can you list those for us?
Sure, hang on a
Great.
second, let me
That
just
would be-
pull it up.
Those were the things that we asked to come out from a MOA and put in the zoning, which are just what Mark just spoke
Okay,
to.
so they're all in the
Yep,
zoning law?
Yep,
Yeah.
they're all in,
So we don't need them in the MOA?
right.
And we did share the language today with the abutters, and I'm hoping that email was received, Jen? Yes. Thank you.
Maybe you
Sorry,
could
just-
just read them off anyway, because
Yeah.
I only got 3 of them.
Yeah, we
Sure.
got the landscaping, the 40-foot setback,
Right.
the 2X setback.
Yeah.
Right.
There was a density suggestion, it was already in the bylaw that the density be limited to 16 units an acre, they're 12.1 acres. The cap would be 194. We didn't put the cap in, but that's the cap.
Yep.
The building setback from the property lines, we've already talked about. Freestanding independent living, we've already talked about. Multi-unit, we've already talked about. Landscaping, we've already talked about. So there were 5 things.
Great.
And that's in an email he sent to me on last Friday.
And just to understand the setback 2X thing, right?
Sure.
How sort of, I'm looking at the actual drawing of the property, so how wide is it? Like, how does that, I'm just thinking, how does that work for you? Like, I'm trying to envision a building, okay, so hey, I keep going back, it keeps needing to go twice as far up. How far back do you get to where you're running into issues on the other side, right? So I'm just
Right.
trying to like,
So we are feeling the squeeze, if
Yeah.
that's part of the,
yeah.
the question. And Ray, who's our project manager, is on Zoom, and I don't know if he wants to share any of that. It's all, none of it's finally engineered, so every concession we make is hopefully a sign of goodwill to the town and the
Absolutely.
neighbors.
What I'm trying to avoid
Yes.
is solving one problem and creating another.
Right.
So, hey, we did
That's
this right
right.
thing where it has to be two, and now we
Now
get
it's
this
a-
giant tower right on the edge of
Right.
the property, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, well, that's not what we meant. Oh,
Correct.
That's what it said. So that's what I'm just trying to, double check.
No, I appreciate you asking that, because that, there's no question, the site's only so big. Yeah, there's no question. Yeah. I think that what Ray had talked about last week, and again, none of this is final or finally engineered, and yes, for the record, we would love a sewer, but assuming we are not able to have a sewer, there'll be additionally space that we need for leach field and those types of things. And so, using the space as best as we can is.
But you feel like that 2X thing works with at least conceptual things you've designed or laid out, and it's not gonna.
At early indications, without all the borings we wish we had, and
Got it.
without all the geotech we wish we had.
But I noticed that Mark jumped in and said that that setback applied to Old Marlboro Road.
Correct.
Yeah.
So is there a different setback for Old Road to 9 Acre Corner?
40 feet from the street line,
Okay,
and
and
that's for any type of
for
building.
any type of height. So it could mass on the Old Road to 9 Acre Corner side, but would be more neighborhood, yeah.
Pushed back from Old Marlboro.
But
Yeah,
we're
so
our own
looking at
neighbor
Property
there.
line, right.
So that's the,
Yep.
it's arguably sort of rectangular, but the short northern edge of the boundary is Old Marlboro Road, and the much longer, and then presumably also the southerly setback, which is up against the country club, is
30, that would be a side yard. The building
Side.
commissioner, in conjunction with Elizabeth, ruled that we have 2 front yards and thus 2 side yards. So
Yeah.
the front yard's 40 feet, except for Old Marlboro, where it's twice the size of the building if it's a multi-unit building.
Okay.
And there's 2 side yards, which would be the country club and the 10th Fairway. And those would be 30 feet, but that's what the bylaw is already,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Okay, good, thank you. Thank you, you've addressed the abutters.
So, Chris, one of the things that, we did have our executive session earlier, and one of, as you've heard tonight, also concerns over revenues, pilot, taxes, et cetera. Can you just help the board understand sort of your assurance around your nonprofit, yet you're committing to pay taxes? Help.
And we are paying
We are paying
taxes.
taxes, and you're going
Right.
to continue to pay taxes. That's the goal. So want to help the board understand that commitment that you're making.
Right.
Or you've
Well,
made publicly already, I should say.
I think the best thing I could say, honestly, Wendy, and I'd admit I'm the least sophisticated tax person probably in the room. What I'd basically say is taxes have always been a part of Newbury Court. And we expect that'll be the future on the new parcel. We just have expected that. It's been our history. It's been our, pattern, and, we don't expect to break that. I think that the, ultimate purpose is to have some modest growth to the current Newbury Court campus that ultimately creates some, releases some of the service, the cost pressure on our services. And I think, if I heard a tiny bit about the towns tonight, we have it in spades. If you can imagine, attracting a workforce that we need to attract to a location like ours. And so our goal is not to sort of undercut the past. Our goal is to sort of have some growth that's measured and accretive so that the current residents and the future residents, have a good balance.
But what reassurance do we have that we could count on that tax revenue?
I think it's in the MOA.
It is, and we haven't reached the final wording of it yet, but that's not a provision that we're having any difficulty with.
Right.
Great, that's good to hear.
Right.
Okay. Other questions?
I have a basic question about sort of how we find ourselves here. Concord traditionally has done zoning with the sponsorship of the planning board and that public process, which involves the hearings. And so while I know there's nothing technically wrong with the citizens petition, which proposes zoning, it seems to me that it's a little out of keeping with how things are normally done. And I'm wondering what's really the impetus for this in terms of timing and why wasn't it appropriate to go through working with the planning board for this particular project?
Well, I'd start by saying, that our decision to make a citizen's petition shouldn't be seen as it was inappropriate to go to the planning board. It was simply one of the two choices we have, and we stepped forward. I would similarly say that, we did not know a full year ago, March of last year, Emerson chose to put that land out to a national bidding competition. We had no idea that was about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We jumped in to, compete with our biggest and fiercest national competitors to preserve the not-for-profit tradition we have in town. We responded. We're fortunate to have won, and thanks to Emerson Hospital for their, choosing our bid among some very, very, very competitive bids. And we simply just came to the decision we should keep moving forward. I don't know that there's, just please don't take any disrespect to the decision of having a citizen's petition.
It's very common in our neighbors. I rewrote the Lexington bylaw maybe 5 or 7 years ago. They have 26 planned development districts, each of them sponsored by the citizen or the owner. Most of Hartwell Avenue, for example, is individual districts designed specifically for that parcel. So this is it's happening in Burlington, it's happening in virtually everywhere right now.
Okay, let's talk about, I'd like to hear your thoughts about how to add affordable units to Concord's inventory. I know this is complicated, but tell us some of the approaches and the pros and the cons that you've been thinking about.
Sure. I'll speak to the first one, which, I know we've referenced before, and with some favorable receipt and some unfavorable receipt. But the first is to be true to our not-for-profit commitment under the IRS statute. And what that ultimately is a lifetime commitment to that resident for health and financial security. You know, if you went back 30, 40 years, say, you know, there's very, very little assisted living, independent living type or retirement communities anywhere in say, New England. And, you know, as the real estate developers have built out sort of modified senior care buildings, you know, we've stayed true to that original intent, which was consistent with our mission, which is, you know, health and financial security for older adults. We want to keep our nursing home. We want to get our nursing home to private rooms. Nobody deserves semi-private rooms in 2025. And so our commitment has been to the long-term service, because a lot of other places will build something, and the lobbies are usually nicer, but the care is not the mission of those organizations. And so, you know, the first thing that we explore and the thing that we really believe in is that long-term commitment. You know, we do serve external clients. About a third of our clients that we serve in the nursing home are, you know, non-Newburyport members, and those are of all income asset levels. About the same number of admissions to the memory support apply. You know, we do $1 million. We've done $14 million of charity care in the last 10 years. $14 million of charity care in the last, and that's audited financial statements for Newburyport, not even the rest of New England Deaconess.
What percent is that of your revenue?
Over 10 years, I don't know, maybe 5-6%. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a meaningful commitment, and the subsidy for that is not Medicare. Sometimes it's Medicaid, but the fundamental subsidy is the community itself, and so it's the budget of the campus, and so, you know, we're always trying to balance how do we manage, you know, for every one of the last 10 years, and especially the last 5 years, as real estate prices have taken off, we've kept our entrance fees down. You know, our goal has been to keep our fees, you know, yes, a responsible budget, but to not let them run out of control. We have a budget committee. We meet every single month, like clockwork, with our residents. We try and make decisions about, you know, what we prioritize or don't prioritize. The financial pressure has been real in the nursing home, in the memory care, nurses, aides, housekeepers, cooks. You know, I'd love to talk about all the things we're doing to try and support that workforce, because it's a lot, and I don't think we talk enough about it. But, you know, we have one budget, and so, you know, I don't, like I said about the planning board, I don't want to have any disrespect about our decision on the citizens petition. I don't want any of the affordable housing groups and advocates to feel like there's any disrespect there. I have tremendous respect there. We don't have a subsidy that offsets our commitments outside of our current or future residents that are there. And that's why this has been such a balanced issue. In addition to that, you can cut me off if you need to, but I do love this stuff. In addition to that, if, you know, we saw a spike, as you might have expected, through the pandemic of care needs, right? So if we had a significant bump, you know, over a 5-year period on care costs. And so, you know, again, the growth that we're hoping to achieve in the new campus is going to offset, hopefully, that spike in care costs, allow us to add more and better health care. In addition to that, you know, we are up against some of the headwinds of developing in an expensive town. You know, we have the blessings of an expensive town and some of the challenges. And so I think, you know, what we're trying to do is just keep everything together and create something viable that's going to serve the next generation.
I think that we really do appreciate the fact that you're delivering a service. You deliver a quality service. You've got a big waiting list, right?
Thank you. Yes.
You've got a good workforce.
Thank you. Yes.
But I also do know that it's very expensive to get into Newburyport.
Right.
Because of that, because of the level of service that costs money, right?
Right.
And in Concord, we're very, you know, we measure our affordable inventory very closely, and we have very strict guidelines so that we're sure, not sure, but we try to manage that so that we feel confident that we are delivering to our underserved community. Whereas I don't, so I'd like to hear your ideas of helping us do that here. How do we make sure that it's, yes, I understand that once somebody is in Newbury Court, you'll keep them until they die, right? But to get in is very expensive, right? So what assurance do you have that there will be open doors to people who need, don't have the assets or the income that you're requiring?
Right. So there's two things I'd say off the bat, and then I can talk about a couple of the ideas. The first is, we always have. And I know that's not necessarily come through a town program, but we always have. That's the first answer. The second answer is, I think the number is 61. I mean, we have more, and I understand it's not quite a single-family home, but we have more opportunities to buy in to our community under $500,000 than I think anybody else in Concord does. And so, again, entrance fees are, if you look nationally, they're pegged as a percentage of the median home price. If you hired a consultant and said, what would your entrance fee supposed to be? They'd say 80% of your median home price. Well, we, as an organization, have done the exact opposite, right? We've said, no, we serve a broad middle market, in addition to, yes, some very affluent folks, but we serve a broad middle market. We do have folks that have come in under a modified program that are not paying an entrance fee, committing to it forever in advance of a project cost in a sewer and committing to paying taxes. I mean, that becomes as much of an act of faith as it does an act of responsible management. And so that's part of what we're stuck between right now. But we always have. We've never, the investments we've made to Newbury Court have stayed at Newbury Court. They've not been to, there's no equity distribution, right? We have a local not-for-profit board, not unlike a select board. And, we think there's value in that.
One of the things that I think does not get discussed is that we're not 40B. So I lived in the big one over on the Sudbury line when my house was being reconstructed, and I enjoyed it immensely. But it's a vanilla box, and we moved in, and that was that. There was no care. Here, the care is such a critical part of life at Newbury Court that it more or less just goes unaccounted for. But the thing that kind of that hangs over this from a legal perspective is the IRS rulings on elder services. At the end of the day, it's not just about providing a housing bargain, it's also about providing health service, and it's also a requirement on the institution to manage its finances so that it doesn't blow up and cost the people who are already residents the money that now has to be thrown into the budget. And that's right in the key ruling of the IRS, which is 72-124. And I have copies of this. I'm more than happy to leave them. But it really is a balancing act. It's not just a straightforward pro forma with a profit margin.
Thank you.
Yeah, because being a nonprofit, right? I mean, if you're going to give somebody something for free, just means the rest of the residents have to pay more, right? So, I mean, that's the balance, I think, right? Is it?
It is.
I see that there's a lot of people in the room, so I'm assuming people have comments or questions.
Sure.
This isn't a hearing, but I will have some time set up for questions. Before we go there, are there any other questions from the board?
You've heard me mention the 85 feet.
Yes.
I do think it's a thing, especially if you're talking about a town meeting compared to what the current building is, right, which I think is 60-something, so just the idea that it might be 20 feet higher. I know there might be something to do with building it into a hill or building parking below, so maybe just being able to kind of, talk about that. I don't know if you have answers here or,
I don't, but it's noted. Thank you, Kim. Yeah.
Actually, I do have one question. Why do you feel you have to go at this town meeting? Because we're all rushing to get this done now. What happens if you wait a year?
Well, first, thank you for asking, right? So one of our big challenges has been exactly that. I think there's two real straight answers. The first one is we don't want to end up in the middle of the MCI shuffle. You know, once MCI becomes in front of all these public hearings, we fear that our issues are just too small to gather any town resources, let alone town focus and attention and so forth. So one, we'd like to do this before MCI really gets bigger. The second is, our wait list continues to grow. We have 300 total units on our current campus, and we're up to 500 on our wait list. And so it just doesn't seem that we're well-served as an organization, letting a year go by, letting things get one more year more expensive. There's a lot of headwinds to development.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a licensed healthcare administrator by training. I am not a developer. There's a lot of things I'd rather do than build something, to be honest with you. It just doesn't seem like waiting is going to help us.
Okay.
Okay, good. I'm going to open it up to the audience. If anybody has any questions or comments, please step up to...
This
I might have someone, I'll move over there.
Okay, great. Right here would be great.
We can just have the public sit up here.
Sit there, Megan, yeah, there's a
Whatever-
chair
Oh,
here.
well, that's fine, whatever
So-
whatever you want, whatever works.
So-
I think this mic is...
Please,
Yeah, it's on.
hi. Please identify yourself and your address and address your questions to the chair.
Yes. Hi, I'm Jim Jackson, 44 Old Marlborough Road. A lot of the things that are discussed tonight, you guys have a lot of different competing interests. And so the neighborhood just has a few concerns. And right now, we just got the revised document this afternoon and going through it. And our big concern is, there's two that I'm going to kind of bring up. One is the 100-foot setback from the country club. We've asked a couple times, could you take a couple feet off of that and increase the margin on Old Marlborough Road? And that fell on deaf ears to date. But the whole purpose here is we've got a neighborhood that we'd like to see the buildings tie into. So it's not a neighborhood into an industrial complex. And we've gotten some part with the 35-foot height on the first row of buildings. But last week we discussed duplexes and triplexes. Today's document says, hold on a minute, we're looking for quadplexes, and they say that the average size of the unit is 2,000 square feet. Those are 8,000 square foot buildings, 40 feet from Old Marlborough Road. That defeats the whole purpose of trying to tie it into the neighborhood. So that's our biggest concern, is if this is done right, it's great for our property values, okay? If it becomes 40 feet off the road and it's a big complex, our property values go right down the toilet. And that's the end of it. Now, we have neighbors that are very concerned about the traffic. Up the street, traffic in the mornings and sometimes in the afternoons is pretty brutal. At the meeting last week, we had a comment that they're going to have a right turn only exit into their property, which was new to all of us, because we were told that on Old Marlborough Road, it was just going to be a gated emergency exit, and all the entrance was going to be on Ornac. So everything is such a rush, and there's been very little transparency. Now, there can't be. I understand where they're coming from. They're negotiating this memorandum of agreement. They're doing all this. But the changes to the amendment, or the warrant article, almost made me feel that we're going to be more industrial than less industrial than our meeting last week, because of the quad units and the 8,000 square foot building potential. And there's a good 15 abutters and neighbors here. no, not everybody's going to want to talk, but I think I've got the main points that we're talking about. You know,
Thank you.
if they just took a few feet off that Concord Country Club, put it on there, it would really help alleviate, the current structure is 70 feet off the road, okay? They're going to 40. Well, if you look at that current structure, it's not far back.
Do you want to respond now? Or would you
I'd
rather?
be happy to if you know, if it's instructive. Yeah, no, I mean, I guess I want to make sure when we're talking about the 70-foot setback, you know, I think the measurement was taken from the road, not the property line, and the setbacks are from the
Yes.
property line.
Right.
But I think as it relates to the cottages that we've, you know, looked at and sort of had put on different designs, I mean, we shared with the neighbors the community that they were pulled from. I guess I missed the 4, and maybe the 4 got put in, but the community that we pulled at was a great community. I think some people went and visited it. The property values there were like phenomenal sale prices, and so we have every interest in having, you know, something that makes our community stronger. We want our values to go up just like you would want your values to go up. It's this, there's no question about that.
And I do agree, the buildings they showed were duplexes and triplexes, but the warrant article doesn't say that.
Okay, so that's something.
That's easy,
that you-
yeah, that's-
You've heard.
Fine,
Thank
yeah.
you. Is there anybody here who has something to add or another topic that they want to discuss or be heard? No, he got it. You got it. You spoke for the room. Oh, Matt. Go ahead.
Hello, Matt Johnson, 21 Winthrop Street. I'm a member of the Concord Housing Foundation, and I think newly appointed to the Concord Municipal.
Yes, you were just
Affordable Housing
appointed. You were
Trust.
just appointed, yes.
So,
You are brand new.
but speaking for myself, and especially on the Affordable Housing Trust's behalf, I'm not speaking yet. But you know, one of the things that we have been discussing among the groups is the affordability provisions, because when in zoning, you identify a 10% threshold and income limits, you know, we need standards for understanding what do those mean. And currently, I still haven't seen any proposal from New England Deaconess. So I actually did put together a proposal. And the main concern, I think, is that for retirees, it's vital to include assets as well as income. So certainly, you know, a retiree can have Social Security, they can have a pension, they also can have minimum distributions from their 401k or IRA, and those all go into standard income, and you would expect everybody that's coming in has got those or is subject to those. But then, you know, they may have sold a house, they may have other assets that they've accumulated over the years, and those you would expect for an affordable unit would be qualified towards their income. And that in a couple different ways. I think one is there's sort of an imputed income from those assets. And the second is for their expected lifetime, you would assume they would burn down those assets, you know. So if you take those formulas, you end up with a different way to calculate income, and I think it's appropriate for retirees, because otherwise, if you just say 150% of you know, median income, well, with a huge you know, cash pile, someone could be quite wealthy, okay? And it really, we're not in the business of trying to provide affordable units for wealthy folks. We're trying to improve accessibility to others. And then there are other aspects to our affordability that we apply in Concord, like local preference, like diversity of dwelling units. So, you know, you have a more limited case in Newbury Court of couples versus singles, but, you know, we'd like to get some method to have those. And then just the being aware of a person goes through potentially different types of units as they're in this model. And so it's not really tied to a physical unit, it's really more to the individual. And so, we need some way to audit, well, where are those 10%? And then the final thing is that Newbury Court has said that they've maintained this 10% affordability in the past as well. And given that the types of housing aren't exclusive to this site, that people will actually need to move, and in fact, in the zoning, they could be off-site, I think that really the affordability provision should apply to, for an MOA anyway, should apply to the entirety of their place, because otherwise, I don't know how you would actually track the percentage of units that are attainable. So those are all aspects that I was hoping to hear about tonight, and I was actually surprised not to hear about any of them. So reporting, all of these things. And again, the other thing I wanted to say, because I think I've learned a lot in this process, is that because Newbury Court is responsible for the individual throughout their life, I do not think that it's appropriate to put any kinds of limits on what the fees are, whether the fees are affordable, what the buy-in is. All of those things are up to them, because basically, once a resident comes in, they're responsible. If they burn down the assets fast, they do. If they let them stay, they do. But ultimately, it's about having somebody with more limited means have an opportunity to get into this community.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Do you want to respond, or do you?
There's a lot there, but I think and I will say in fairness, when we met, I had a whole presentation that I don't think I ever got through, but I think the reality is that the business model, the model of what we offer, and again, you say business, Peter Gunnis would turn in his grave if I use the word business for a not-for-profit. The model that sustains itself is, by just its nature, it's going to be variable based on the long-term care needs, the care costs, and the actuaries. And so if we define everything right on point, perfect, etched in stone on the tablet today, it does not allow future managers or, whoever, myself or my successor, does not allow them to adapt to changing actuaries or to changing care costs.
I would just note that these standards are in an MOA that can be renegotiated with the select board as needed. So for a mutually agreed thing, you can change those standards if they're not appropriate. So I just think that we do need published standards that identify why it is.
I think what we're asking for is something more concrete.
Sure.
That assures us that people with lower income and assets have a chance to live in this new facility and your existing facility. So, rather than telling us that you spend, $1 million in the last 14 years or whatever.
14 in the last 10. 14, it's real money.
It is. Sorry, it is.
Real money.
It is, it is. And I don't want to diminish that, and I hope I didn't insult you. But I think that what we're asking for is something concrete that reassures us that people with, again, lower income and lower assets will, some portion of the people that come in will be that population. And how we structure that, I don't know.
Those standards are currently being negotiated. They're in the MOA. The first is income, and we've always said, including in the bylaw that we drafted, that it's 100% of AMI. 150% of AMI.
50%, yep.
And we're only dealing with 1- and 2-person households because that's the nature of the beast.
Right.
With regard to the asset limitation, it's a matter under discussion.
Good.
Where we have a parameter that we're exploring, and we need to run the math.
Very good.
I mean, one of the things that we're fully conscious of under the IRS is we have to take into consideration such expenses as the payment of indebtedness, maintenance of adequate services sufficient to ensure life care for each patient, and reserves for physical expansion commensurate with the needs of the community and the existing resources of the organization. So it's not just a punch by number kind of 40B approach this is affordable, that's not affordable.
I know. I mean,
But we will get there. There's not a big difference between us right now in the MOA.
I hope so. We are coming from a different place. And it's hard for me to get my head around your model versus what we're used to, which is the 40B model. So
Thank you.
we've got work to do.
Thank you.
Okay, and
Thank you.
I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Did we have any other, Rich?
Just quickly.
Rich, come to the mic.
You have to come to the
Yeah.
mic.
Rich Feely, 347 Lexington Road. I'm glad to see that there's been movement on some of the concerns for the neighborhood. And this is the first I've heard that anything is in negotiation on affordability. And I know that Mr. Johnson has proposed something that I think is quite strong. So I just want to see the same kinds of guarantees. And bear in mind, 150% of AMI includes all those people in their peak working years. It's not 150% of retirement income for a former teacher. And I want to see some former teachers in Concord be able to live in Newbury Court. And if that requires a little cross-subsidization from the people that are buying the 2,000 square foot units, that doesn't bother me. And I hope that we'll be able to negotiate this before town meeting, but I would be very reluctant to support it if we don't have something concrete. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very good. I see no hands on the, so I hope you've heard some good feedback.
Yes,
I
thank
really
you.
appreciate you coming here, and we'll continue to talk.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Hopefully Wednesday at 9?
Wednesday at 9?
Okay.
And
Wednesday, not
we
Thursday.
may invite you
Thursday.
back.
No,
Thursday, good. I'm like,
Thursday at 9.
uh-oh. Yeah.
We
Thursday.
reserve the right to invite you back, but
Okay.
maybe not.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris. Thank you, Mark.
Okay,
Okay.
public ceremonies.
Public ceremonies.
Just as a parting shot, I believe your council has the latest version of the CCR COD as of this morning. And
Yes.
that'll be the one that shows the warrant with floor amendments in yellow.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Terry, it's your turn.
My turn. Oh, yes. Yes. Okay. All right, this should be very short. Is Holly here? Holly. Holly is here from the chair of the PCCC. Holly, if you want to come up.
Feel like asking you to take an encore bow for Patriots
I know.
Day, Holly.
Really?
Again.
Really?
Really?
So Holly can explain better than I can, but there are a lot of people in the charge currently, and they're having trouble getting a quorum. They want to reduce the number, and that's pretty much the main change, plus the veterans requirement, right?
Yes, that is correct.
There's not really a change to the duties of the committee. It's just a quorum issue.
Membership.
Right.
Yeah, right. That's really it.
That's it?
Yeah.
You came all this way for that.
Can I ask a question, though? Can I ask a question about the charge? Because it sounds like you can have associate members, and they're assigned to a certain event, and then after 60 days, their participation ends. I was just kind of curious. I've never seen anything like that.
Actually, so this is my second year, my first
Yeah.
year as chair. I've actually never seen not like the associate members done.
Yeah. Okay.
So I actually can't answer that question.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've ever done, I mean, I'm guessing they must have done it at some point.
Should we remove it?
Well, that's kind of where I was going. I mean, you know what, it's a little bit like the Climate Action Committee, where you probably want the committee to talk about it. It's an option, but
But does it hurt to leave it?
it doesn't hurt to leave it. I was just curious about, do we do it? And it's just odd, because as we're talking about committee participation, Cameron.
I'd
it's
rather
just-
leave it if it's not hurting anything. And
Yeah,
then I
it's
can,
not
like,
hurting anything.
Go
I
back
just-
to the team and figure out like if there's a reason to.
Right, I haven't seen them use it, but
I feel like they have like,
way back.
well, yeah, way back
Right.
before me.
You're right.
It just says their term should expire. I'm like, wow, it really expires, or they're just not on that little project
I think
anymore?
it's so that they could do like a specific
Yeah,
thing.
right. Yeah, it's
for us
just-
if needed.
Yeah.
Right.
So does the,
Basically, you want to take it from 9 members to 7.
To 7.
Really?
Yeah.
And you're moving
Dropping
it
them.
from 5-year term to 3-year.
Yes, because we think the 3-year will
Yep.
maybe get more
And
people
you're
to.
eliminating the requirement for veterans of military. I mean, we certainly
Right.
can have
Yes.
military service.
Yeah.
There's nothing that takes that away, but it's just removing that sort of.
Right, because we've had trouble recruiting.
Yeah.
is the expectation that it would be 2 3-year terms like other committees now?
Yep.
I would hope so.
I mean,
Well,
Like
just-
that you
yeah.
could, that you
Yeah, yeah.
could re-up for.
Right, you
a
could
second
reappoint,
term.
right, so that was,
So you're not.
P10 and.
no, but it goes, like, the planning board has 5 years, but they don't get reappointed,
Oh, yeah.
right? So it's a little different, so,
We gotta
but the
change.
charge usually speaks to that stuff.
Well,
But
of the, for example, if this is your second year, you presumably were appointed
No,
for.
so I think that I would stay for my 5-year term.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anybody that is on the.
Not retroactive.
team
Yeah.
Currently,
New appointment.
It's not.
Yeah,
it would
right.
just be new
Appointments. Yep.
appointments. Because
Yeah.
we're going to reduce this year, we're at 6 right now, and we're going to become 4. We're
Okay.
losing 2 members.
You
That,
want to just get it back up to 7.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and at
Okay.
least with 4, we have a quorum
Yeah.
with
Right,
a
okay.
7.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
We're
we-
having trouble with the quorum piece.
Do we need to, this comes up with the appointments, but if you actually did find 3 new people this year, then they would all roll off at the same time if they all got
Yeah, you
appointed
have
for
to stagger 'em.
3-year terms. So
Just
you might be
conscious.
able to recruit for, hey, would you serve 1 year or would you serve 2 years right
Right.
now?
Oh,
Just-
to like stagger.
Yeah,
Yes.
stagger
Yeah.
them, give people an opportunity. Okay, great.
I mean, I'm fine with these changes.
Yeah, I
I just
don't
have
have
a
any-
question
Me too.
about it.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's very straightforward. Sorry it took so long.
No, that's okay.
Okay,
So,
go ahead, you want to
we
move?
ready for the motion?
We are.
Move to approve the amendment to the Public Celebrations and Ceremonies and Celebrations Committee charge as discussed and included in the Select Board packet.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, very good. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you guys so
Thank
much.
you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Chair's Report. I just have a few things to talk about. Next Thursday, May 15th, the Ag Committee is holding their spring symposium. The topic is 250 years of, the next 250 years of farming, the challenges and solutions. It'll be held at the Goodwin Room at 6:30.
Is it going to be recorded?
I don't know.
Can you ask? Is it? Okay. I can't go, that's why I'm just asking.
Next week, a week from today, the 19th, we're having the Housing Roundtable here, beginning at 5 o'clock. That will go from 5 to 6:30. Then I think we're going to have a very brief Select Board meeting, mostly to talk about appointments, and then, do we need I'm just thinking out loud now. Do we need an executive session then, as well?
I don't know if,
46?
No. Yes.
yes. I'm not sure. We're going to have one meeting on Thursday, so,
Okay, we might. You'll let us know.
yeah.
Okay, okay,
Is that, we should just check, can people do that?
yeah,
Maybe do it after?
after.
Yeah, no, it would be after,
Yeah, that's fine.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, because
Okay,
the housing forum starts at like 5 o'clock.
Yeah,
doesn't
so
it?
5 to
Yeah.
6:30.
5 to 6:30, right. So then
Okay.
6:30, we'll have a short meeting, and then maybe go to executive session at 7 or something, or maybe executive session and then a short meeting.
So all we have to do in the regular session is appointments? We don't have to?
So
do-
far, we might have some liquor licenses, we might have some gifts, but it will be very,
But we don't have any articles we have to take position on?
Well, we
Nope.
are going to, well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Okay, good.
all the ones we did were report at town meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're good, okay. The other thing is that the Mass Municipal Association is having new training for Select Board members on June 13th at Devon's. These things are very, very helpful. I find them very helpful. And this, I don't know, months, years, we'll be focusing on open meeting law and municipal finance. So I will send that around to you. And so Cameron, you might be interested in this. Wendy, you might, well,
I
you
went
won't be
last
here.
year.
And you're not going to be here on June 13th
No, no.
anyway. And I'll send it to Paul as well.
Yeah, I
okay?
sent it to Paul already, but
Oh, you did?
send it
Great.
again, that's
Good, That's
fine.
fine, good.
Poor Paul. He's like,
Okay,
"You don't know what you're
two
doing."
other things. One, I think we should be giving some thought to our FY '26 goals.
Yes.
Just because if we want the other boards and committees to establish goals that align with our goals, we got to be fast off the block so that they don't get ahead of us, which happens often with the planning board. So I think I'm kind of putting in a
Yeah.
plug for the presumptive chair here, that let's start thinking about FY, I already have a list
Good.
of FY26 goals. And then finally, I want to say that there are some parents that are putting together a binder and some kind of a social media thank you. I shouldn't be saying this, never mind. I just realized it's supposed to be confidential.
Oh, okay.
You didn't hear that?
Never mind. I didn't
Nice
start that.
It's nice that
I
somebody's
didn't
going to get
start-
thanked.
Somebody's going to get a thing, and it's going to be great. Okay, town manager's report. Do you have anything for us? Okay. Liaison report.
Oh.
What?
I just have one thing on liaison, which is.
Go ahead.
Not about a specific committee, but what, APP 10, we need to get them.
Get
We had
that-
some good discussion, but we didn't resolve.
That's right.
Sort of changes, so just want to make sure we
Yeah,
get it back
schedule.
on the agenda.
I think he's the
So that's all.
Do you think
Good.
we're ready
Got
to
it.
handle that before town meeting, or is that
No.
an after town meeting?
It's up to, I mean, it's up to the,
What's your agenda? I mean, are we going to be talking town meeting stuff on the 27th?
27th is the other.
Is our last sort
Yeah,
of
it's our
official
last
standard meeting?
official meeting. You know,
It's on the agenda.
right now, I feel like there are some big things that are going to be, especially the deaconess, that are going to be in play. And I'm not sure I personally have the headspace to give it the attention it needs. So I would prefer after town meeting.
All right.
But if other people want to do it sooner.
I just don't know what the agenda is, so I trust your judgment. I mean, I have no idea what's
May
on.
27th?
Yeah.
It was really to do the last-minute deliberations, hopefully.
That's what I
But we
figured.
might not be ready.
Mm-hmm.
So we might cancel 27th and have a meeting right before town meeting, the date, you know how often.
I might be remote, on the 27th.
And I think we kind of have some administrative matters to do on the 27th if there's not going to be a meeting until June 30th.
And is that official too? So the 30th is probably,
So we probably, you know what, I'll bring in a proposal for
Thank you.
next week so that we can actually look at the calendar, because
That'd be
I
great.
had made the suggestion that we delay until the 30th because at least two of you are going to be in Japan. And so it seemed to me that, that trying to calendar, you know, we'd run into potential quorum problems as well as other issues if we tried to meet. So, and I think that it works out, check your calendars, but if we start on the 30th, we can meet every other week for the remainder of the year without stepping on anything. You know, we miss all the holidays.
really?
It's kind of,
Cool.
it's the magic stepping stones to consistent, to a
Yeah.
schedule. But I know that there was also the discussion about possibly having a meeting, and we could still, you know, especially if there were administrative matters and we wanted to schedule something for the 16th, we could do that, because presumably at least Cameron, myself, and Paul would be available to do that if
That's right.
staff needs it.
So are people okay with doing it if we have time on the 27th?
The schedule?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Sure.
I mean, I'm not
No.
like pushing,
Yeah.
like, I can be prepared, we can talk about it. If it ends up getting pushed, I just wanted to bring it on the radar. So
No,
if
it's
we want
not-
to try to do it on the
No, it's
27th,
good.
that's great. If it
Okay, let's see.
doesn't- If it doesn't fit,
Let's see, next week we'll talk about the
Okay.
calendar. Okay, great. Remind us.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, good. Anything else on the liaison report? Any?
Yeah, there's an important development at Hanscom,
Yep.
and it's in my liaison report, but there's an important meeting
Yes.
May 20th at 7 o'clock by Zoom. It's on the town calendar. The developer is going to come in. There's a big change to that expansion.
Yeah.
It's really unclear exactly what they're proposing,
Yep.
whether they're trying to split it into many little pieces, or are they just doing this one piece, or I don't know. So
Yep.
come to that meeting, May 20th.
Very
So it's
good.
20, yeah, and I can't go. So my question was, is that going to be
Yes, it's
recorded or it's a
recorded,
presentation?
yes.
Which group
Okay.
is meeting?
HFAC.
So I actually had a separate question on that, too. The reference to the Merlin Labs, is that the military side of Hanscom?
No, Merlin Labs
Okay.
is the new proposal that they're going to be talking about with this thing called autonomous aviation,
Yeah, I
which I
got it.
think is an AI-generated airplane instead of a pilot.
Oh, okay, because it said it was at the Navy hangar, so I just didn't know if it was commercial or military.
Okay, the former Navy hangar is on the commercial side.
Okay, that was my question.
That's a really excellent question. That's right next to where they want to do the expansion.
Well, because the military's expanding also, but that really
Okay.
hasn't. I mean, that's been ongoing.
There are a million questions on this, and
Okay.
there's tons that I don't know, so we're going to find out all about it, I guess, that day.
Okay, and then, Mary, I had a question about 2229 Main Street.
Yep.
And I think it was, the 2229's having discussions, will focus on liens, liability, transfer mechanisms with the EPA and DOG. Is the Main Street, the advisory committee, is their charge done? I thought they were doing a report, and I was just wanted to check
They did a
responsibility.
report.
I know they did.
They
So
did a
is their
report.
charge complete?
Yes, yes.
So they're dissolved? I don't think so, are
We
they?
have
I
not-
just-
We thought,
I
we
just-
had a long discussion about,
Yeah.
do we have to meet again
Right.
to approve the minutes of this meeting?
Oh.
No.
The infinite do. So the decision was, we had our last meeting, we've got minutes.
Okay.
Right, but Wendy's
We need
right.
to vote to
We
resolve.
We
need
do.
to vote.
We would need to-
Shannon, will you put that on the agenda for our next meeting? They will be,
I got it.
they're
I got
done.
it. Okay. And then I just had one more, just sort of
Yeah.
comment, observation. So
Yeah.
in the West Concord Junction Village, you guys, there's talk about signage.
Yes.
And meeting with CPW. So I just want to let you know that the West Concord Advisory Committee is also talking about signage, and they were going to talk to the Transportation Committee about signage. So we
Oh,
got three
signage,
committees
I know.
talking about signage. And I'm like,
No, the-
here's a goal. Or have the committees talk, because they all are talking the
That's a-
same thing. So
it's
Does that
funny you
make
should say that.
sense?
The Ag Committee is.
They're all talking about
The Ag Committee's talking about signs too. So
Right,
yes,
so-
signs are a big issue right now.
But I just feel like, I don't
Yes.
know if it's a charge.
Okay.
But, so anyways, I told the West Concord chair to talk to, at minimum, the West Concord Junction Village, and just find out what they're doing, and just talk, because in West Concord, there's a lot of concerns around the parking signs. I don't know what signs the Junction Village group were concerned about.
They
Maybe
just want to take down the sign
The
that says,
historic
that
district?
includes the word junction,
Oh, just that?
just that.
Well,
Well, they might care about other stuff.
but there's
There's
also,
all the freaking bike signs that everyone's.
well, right.
Too many
but
signs, too many
There's
signs.
Junction Park, not Junction
I know.
Village.
No, I
That's
know.
where the signs are the problem.
I know, but the West Concord Junction Cultural District might care about those too.
Right, right. And
Yes,
as
they
far
might.
as I know, they have not contacted the Transportation Committee, so
Okay,
you
I
might
think-
want
Yeah.
to know that.
Yes, no, you're right. Signs are,
Yep.
everybody,
So
okay.
there's something there that might be a goal.
Okay.
All right, so that was it. Don't
Any,
need to
any
go
other
on.
questions, any other additions to the liaison questions?
Just the one comment, we did receive word from Senator Barrett's office
Oh, yeah.
that they did in fact actually submit an earmark for MCI
Very
in
good.
the amount of 250,000, so.
Oh, for
the-
next year?
the-
For-
Yeah, contrary to what I said, which was that they hadn't done it, they have, so the odds remain slim.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at least,
Still,
it's in the process, so, what's that famous quote? It's not dead yet.
yeah.
Right. Okay,
Okay,
great.
great.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, very good. Thank you.
All
Good
right.